I'd like to welcome everybody. I'd like to call tonight's meeting of the Saline Area Schools Board of Education to order July 9th, 2024. And we will start standing as you are able with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Brad Gerby.
Glad to do it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Brad, once again. We are at the public comment section. A member of the public may address the board briefly for up to 3 minutes or request to be scheduled on the agenda of a future meeting. Please note that students will be given priority to speak on any topic. The first public participation portion will be limited to 1/2 hour and normally limited to agenda items. Second public participation portion will be offered at the end for any other comments. Individuals addressing the board should consider the rules of common courtesy. Public participation portions can't be used to make personal attacks against a board member, district employee, or student. We have a Melissa Ashby, and on deck is Kimberly Seacrest Ashby. Oh, since you're somewhat new at this, our Secretary Miller will start the timing when you start speaking. You have 3 minutes at about, is it 30 seconds? Yes. 30-second mark, she'll hold up the yellow card, at which point you'll get really nervous. And when you're done, she will hold up the red card when your time is up.
Okay. So I'm a student, and I have both witnessed and been a victim of bullying. I have been bullied by athletes in gym who, who will just be like very subtle about it, but will make fun of me because I'm not an athlete and I'm in no way athletic and like I hate gym, and so they'll do that. And there was also one time in gym where we had a lot of special ed students, and me and my friends made friends with them because they're really cool, but all these athletes would like come up to them and like bully them and be really mean and like make snide comments. Like there was this one time a kid brought an umbrella into school, which I was like, okay, cool, you do you. And they kept like going under the umbrella and being like, it's not raining, and there's just like snide comments, but they did it in such a way so that if a student or if a teacher came up to them, they could like brush it off, which is how most bullying goes on this day. I do really well in school, which means that I have a lot of other students asking me to do their work for them or give them answers, which I don't believe in. I, will help, but they would, keep asking me, and like, every single day I'd walk in, I'd be bothered about, will you give me answers, and, all this other stuff. And I have been like texted about it, like nonstop about being given answers. There was one time where I had a crush on somebody, and I was told that this person liked me, and so, all this other stuff. And I got constantly texted by them and their friends asking me, like, details about it and, like, why, like all these things, like, when did it start, and, like, which friends don't you like of this person, and just like a lot of stuff. Like I would be texted, and I had said many times, I was like, I don't want to be texted anymore, I'm done with the drama. I have been also texted many times, asked to buy people cookies at the edge at the high school, and I have also witnessed bullying, so not only with the special ed thing, but a lot of my friends who also happen to be queer, they get, subtly bullied a lot and like told mean and snide things too. And the thing is that all of these people that do it, they do it very subtly, so that if a teacher comes up to them, they can't get in trouble. And so I think something that should be done is that, like, teachers, if a student comes up to you and says, hey, this is happening, to believe it, do something about it, listen, be active, and to just pay more attention to what's going on in your classrooms. So.
Look at that, without notes too. I was going to say this also, Melissa, that the board is not going to react, but I do want to tell you, knowing this board, we listened very, very closely to what you had to say. Thank you. Next up is Pastor Kimberly Sechrist, Ashby.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I am here, yes, I am pastor of First Presbyterian, but I'm especially here tonight on behalf of the City of Saline's Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Accessibility Committee, of which I am a member. With that, I attended most of the listening sessions that our superintendent held with different groups within the school district. I want to publicly say thank you for those. Those were exceptionally helpful. A lot of us from the city tried to attend as well so that we could hear some of the ongoing situations and be able to respond to those. So I appreciate the effort that's going on. I also wanted to officially report back that there was one issue that came out in those listening sessions that really was more a city issue. And so to close that loop, I'm reporting back to you that we did talk to the city about the Mill Pond Playground. It's been referred to Parks and Rec Committee, and they are seeking grants to replace playground equipment at this point. So I just wanted to report back that we have indeed taken care of that issue which came up. Thank you all very much for all the good work you're doing.
Thank you very much. Seeing no more public comment, we're moving on to the response to the previous public comment, and at this point I would like to say that I will decline to comment on previous public comment from the last meeting. At this point, we're looking to revise or approve the agenda. Items can be added or approved from the agenda, or the order can be changed at the request of an individual board member or the superintendent. Agendas must be approved before proceeding further. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve this agenda.
Motion, Kirby.
Gerby.
Support, Stebbin.
Stebbin. No discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you very much. I just want to make sure I get this 6. Gregory, JS, 6-0. Thank you very much. We have an agenda. We have several action items. First, I'd like to entertain a motion to name the following banks or depositories for the various funds of the Saline Area Schools in fiscal 24-25 year. Bank of Ann Arbor, Michigan Liquid Asset Fund, and the Old National Bank.
A motion, Miller.
Miller?
Second.
Tim Austin? Do we have a comment from? We'll take a peek at that when we get to it. Right, so we have a motion. Without any discussion then, let's put it to a vote. Please, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Great, 6-0.
So, Michael, just
Yes,
to, there's no addition past Bank of Ann Arbor, Michigan Liquid Asset Fund,
There is no what?
Old National Bank. Those are the three. There's no, that one isn't
No, the
open.
discussion is that there's a motion later that needs to be amended to
Okay.
be in compliance with a new updated policy.
Okay, thanks, Jenny.
Thank you. I'd like to entertain a motion to authorize Stephen Lodge, Superintendent, as the primary signer on all checks written by the district, with Miranda Owsley, Assistant Superintendent of Finance, as alternate on all accounts listed. And this is the very long list I must read. A Bank of Ann Arbor, 2021 bond checking account, 2023 bond checking account, Michigan Liquid Asset Fund, or MILAF, 2021 bond investment account, 2023 bond investment account, Old National Bank, the general fund payroll, community education, recreation cares, food service, student activity, The Edge, flex benefits, Maestro, 2016 BNS debt service, 2018 BNS 2 debt service, 2021 BNS 3 debt service, 2018 refunding debt service, 2023 BNS 1 debt service, the sinking fund, Paul Handy Scholarship Fund, Tim Kirley Memorial Fund, Horticulture Award, Randy Hoffman Fund, Rachel Townsend Fund, the Dora Mae Meyer Memorial Scholarship, and Catherine Steiner Burr Scholarship. Do we have a motion? Tim Austin moves.
Support, Stebbin.
Jennifer Stebbin supports. Any discussion, any comments, questions, queries, quibbles? No? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Nay? Or same sign? Right, thank you. I'd also want to entertain a motion to authorize Stephen Lodge, Superintendent, and Miranda Owsley, Assistant Superintendent of Finance, as signatories or on transfers of investment monies.
Motion,
Kirby.
Support. Oh, go ahead, Jenny.
Support, Miller.
Okay, hearing no discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Right, 6-0, thank you. Recommended motion, I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt the resolution for continued participation in the Michigan State of Michigan Loan Revolving Fund as submitted by Assistant Superintendent Miranda Owsley.
Motion?
I'll get Jennifer Miller, supported by Brad Gerby. Comments? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Right, opposed? All right, great, 6-0. Was this one that you had
Yeah,
a modification?
I'm willing to, since that was me. It was updated, but this looks like the one prior to that, adding or board,
I got it in this part.
as we did last year.
I'll read it then. Oh, I see, okay, thank you. It'll be clear, so people people listening in then will know. I'd like to entertain a motion to appoint the Troon Law Firm PC of Lansing, Michigan, and Collins and Blaha PC as legal counsel for the district for the 24-25 school year. Oh, sorry, for the district and school board, or board. Right, so you understand the change. In addition, the district is authorized to utilize other law firms pending areas of expertise. Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Easta, thank you. Support Brad Gerby, thank you. Any other discussion or comment? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Opposed? 6-0. Thank you very much. Yeah, thanks for catching that. I remember that discussion we had last year about this. And I'd like to entertain a motion to accept the adoption and revisions to Policy 5511, dressing and grooming as submitted by the Policy Committee, as submitted by the Policy Committee.
So moved, Stebbin. I didn't know Jenny was going to do that one.
Support Miller?
Thank you very much. Any discussion, comment? Queries?
Yes. I would like to reiterate that I don't think that we should remove, or actually, I feel that we should put in that the principal should invite the participation of staff and students in preparing the dress code. You know, this was initially on there. This was something that was proposed from the DEIAC as well to add, and the policy's been pushed back for I think at least a couple years now, and every time it came back to the policy committee, invite the participation of staff and students had been removed. So that kept being removed, and now it came back to the table with those not checked, so it will not be included. So again, I encourage the participation, even if it isn't written here, that still occur. I think that's important when we talk about student dress code and the inequities that have happened, to have those voices who are, you know, who are in the buildings, you know, experiencing whatever. So.
Other comments?
I just wanted to note that it's in the packet, but just as a result of our last discussion, letter E now reads, for anyone listening, that has been revised. And so if you're not looking at the packet, it now says, direct staff to enforce the district's dress code in accordance with Saline Area Schools non-discrimination policy, which is policy 10145, and the transgender non-binary student policy, policy 5517.02.
Thank you. Are there other comments? Right, well, let's put this to a vote then. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Well, hearing none, thank you. 6-0. And a personal note, thank you for getting this done. I also like to entertain a motion to accept the adoption of policy 1540, the administrative staff reductions / recalls, as submitted by the policy committee.
Motion, Gerby.
Brad Gerby moves.
Support Miller.
JM. All right, do we have any comments from anyone regarding this? Hearing no comments, then I'd like to put it to a vote, please. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great, 6-0, thank you. That deals with our action items. We have 3 scheduled reports this evening, and we're gonna get to the first and most exciting one first. I'd like to welcome to the podium Dr. Ryan Rowe, who will provide an overview of Washtenaw County's career technical education. Did I just steal all your thunder?
That was the presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank you so much.
Be short.
Thank you for allowing me just a few minutes to talk about an update to our countywide design process, kind of talk about what we are doing currently, what we have done, what we are doing, and more importantly, probably why we are doing this. So again, it is our overarching goal to have every student in Washtenaw County approach the graduation stage at their high school graduation to confidently state their post-secondary plan, and hopefully throughout their pre-K through 12th grade experience have had experiential and applied learning opportunities that affirmed that choice. That's it. There's beautification and simplicity, and that is it. And it's surprising to still state how many students approach high school graduation and say, I don't know. And that, to me, after 13 years, is not the right answer. So all of this work is going to that. It all started really with opportunities and access to our career technical education programs, but it's so much more than just our juniors and seniors in CTE. It is about I call continuum of care from pre-K to 12th grade. What experiences can every student have starting at pre-K through 5th grade that they understand themselves, that they like working outside, they like working with other people, they like working with computers, they like taking care of others. In middle school, they start to dabble in what they enjoy and apply why they like what they do to what they could do. And then their freshman and sophomore years, they explore a little bit in these introductory level classes, intro to baking, intro to foods, autotronics, engine fundamentals. And then hopefully they have a capstone experience in their junior and senior year. So their junior year, they can enroll in a career technical education program or advanced placement or dual enrollment or a co-op or a variety of other areas. And then their senior year, apply that in some authentic real world experience, hopefully with business industry. So that's where it all started. And the U of M Youth Policy Lab that is right in our backyard had done a lot of studies in the state of Michigan about the lack of equity and access to career technical education programs at various areas in the state, from the Upper Peninsula to the west side of the state. And because they're in our backyard, we thought it was an opportune time for them to really take a deep dive in Washtenaw County. Why do we exist in the way that we exist with career technical education? So they did a report for us that's available now. The superintendent's just received that. We'll be sharing it publicly in the near future. Although I served as a CPED administrator and CT director here in Saline, there was a lot of things that we do in, I'll call, consortiums. So Ann Arbor Public Schools does their own career technical education, and Ypsilanti Community Schools does their own, and Whitmore Lake does their own. And we're just fortunate in the consortium that 6 districts came together to do, as the vision states, what not one district can do, we can do together. So where's the catalyst with us working on a county-wide scale? Which led us to me presenting this and really promoting this pathway to potentially a decision day. Philosophically, how we could develop a system of career technical education and experiential and applied learning, and also hopefully have a funding model. So we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. So what we've done is, we've done a few things. We have applied for a CT equipment grant, which 3 years ago had $530,000. Last year it had $580,000, and this year had $1.153 million. So over $1 million of that was within the consortium itself, many within the labs at Saline. That not only the consortium students get to appreciate, but so do the Saline students in their 9th and 10th grade elective classes. So that will continue, and that's being facilitated at the countywide level with support from Emily Cook and Miranda and others. We've also developed a countywide network. So Society of Manufacturing Education, SME Prime, you've probably heard this from Kara Stemmer, but engineering programs that have been developed, and we'll show an expansion of the programs here in a couple minutes, in working with Lincoln Schools, that is really working on electronics, digital electronics, EV, and working with Ypsilanti Schools more on the machining side. Manchester has some engineering programs, robotics in Chelsea. We have this engineering manufacturing education network. I talked with a gentleman from SME Prime, vice president of the foundation, and I said, it's interesting that we have our FAME chapter, Federation of Advanced Manufacturing Education at Washtenaw Community College. Students can graduate from high school, go to work for companies like Toyota Research and Development 2 days a week, making $20 an hour, while attending Washtenaw Community College 3 days a week in a cohort setting, graduate after 2 years with an Advanced Manufacturing Technology Associate's degree, and start with those businesses around $60,000. And I said, it's interesting that we have the FAME Mitten chapter at Washtenaw Community College, SME Prime Schools, engineering manufacturing programs, feed the FAME chapter, and yet we don't have one SME Prime school district in Washtenaw County. So I'm talking to him via Zoom. And he gave me a look, which I knew later when I looked in the mirror said, well, then do something about it. And so I started to work with Lincoln and Ypsi specifically. Kara was working with Saline with Trent Trout, and 3 of the 16 programs that are launching this fall are in Washtenaw County. Saline, Ypsi, and Lincoln. And all of these engineering manufacturing programs are working together. They complement, they don't compete. So if you want robotics, Fanuc Robot, you go to Chelsea. If you want digital electronics and electric vehicles, you go to Lincoln. If you want computer integrated manufacturing, you go to Saline with Trent Trout. The problem is that if you are residing in Ypsilanti, you can't access these other programs. If you reside in Saline, you can't access a collision repair program in Ypsilanti because we have these consortium, we have these silos. So that's what we're working towards, to break those down. Part of that CTE equipment grant, that money that I just said towards that equipment, is intended for non-millage funded counties. So we're one of those. And the legislators are saying, invest this money in part to convince your taxpayers, look at what we can do with $500,000, what could you do with $5 million? So we're working towards that end. So we're developed countywide networks, SME Prime, the FAME chapter. We are also consolidating efforts with our CTE New Teacher Bootcamp. So a majority of the people that Kara's hiring as new CTE teachers are coming out of business industry. They're not coming from traditional educational routes. So they know the technical aspects of machining and nursing, but they don't have the pedagogy. They haven't gone through that. So we offer, Kara and myself and Tom Pachera from Ann Arbor, offer a boot camp for new CTE teachers, so they don't have to be brand new. They could be 1 to 3 years. And we walk through all aspects of education, from planning and preparation, pacing guides, how to work with diverse populations. And so we're going to offer that again in July. And there's 26 teachers in Washtenaw County that will be joining together for that process. So we're excited about that. We applied for a $250,000 consolidated studies grant. So what could we do to develop a countywide system so that any student residing in any county could access any CTE program? It was $250,000. We received that. So that helped pay for the U of M Youth Policy Lab report, in part helped pay for my position, and then paid for in part another position of a CT data and entry specialist at the ISD. So in part, that study came out. It showed that we have some areas for improvement in this county and how we can expand access, including transportation, expanding programs such as aviation that we don't have currently, hospitality, tourism management that we could open countywide, our engineering manufacturing, our health science pathway. And so out of those results out of the U of M Youth Policy Lab, we can now apply for another grant to implement a structure that would support all of those efforts. And we will be applying for $5 million to help support that. So what would that look like? It would look like business, it would look like enrollment and power school and software and transportation and administration of these programs, and studying what programs could we expand so that all students could access programs in Washtenaw County. This is all leading to our date in August, on August 12th. Our business industry roundtable and folks that we've been working with will join the Washtenaw Superintendents Association, the superintendents. We're coming together to talk about the study, where we're headed with this effort, where we can expand, where our opportunities lie. And I'm really excited about that because I think if we all come together, then these opportunities could be available to all students. Hopefully, in August when we meet, some recommendations come out of that philosophically, how we can structure CTE in Washtenaw County for all students. And then in November 2025, if that's in partnership with Washtenaw Community College, potentially a vocational millage, that would be our decision day in November 2025. If we passed a millage, what would that help support? It would help support your vocationally certified teachers' salary and benefits. It would help to pay for transportation to the locations that our students attend, equipment, programming, curriculum, and development. So what we've been working on, if you look at the map, we had 50 state-approved CTE programs the year prior. All of the areas that are in circle that are proposed, so there are 10 new state-approved CTE programs that are launching this fall. So we're going from 50 state-approved CTE programs to 60. You'll see those are mainly launching in areas that have limited CTE opportunities currently, with Ypsilanti, Lincoln, the only district that didn't host at least one state-approved CTE program. And you can see they're pretty diverse. There's engineering manufacturing, there's theater management up at Whitmore Lake, careers in education at Whitmore Lake. But pretty proud that we worked pretty rapidly to expand from 50 to 60 CTE programs. I will note, not one of those 60 CTE programs is open to students from all 9 districts. Those are dependent on where you reside. So I'm still searching what is that unicorn program, and potentially aviation, that we could launch in this upcoming year that would be open to students from all 9 districts in partnership with business industry. Last slide is really the millages map. So this needs to be updated because there's a couple of these counties that are working towards millages at this point in time, and will go out for a vote. But currently, if you look at this map, those that are above 1 mill, so if you see those like in Lenawee County that have 2 point something, those were passed back in the 70s. Those were passed in the old vocational days before Prop A, before 1994. After that, so they could pass those for as much as they wanted and for as long as they wanted. After 94, you could go out for up to 1 mil, and it was time limited, so you had to go out to re-up. So there's just a few of us left without a vocational millage. Washtenaw County is one of those. But certainly moving forward, we are researching, we're analyzing how we could best support, and maybe that's a millage and maybe it isn't, CTE programming at the high school level, but more importantly, that career exploration from pre-K through 12th grade. And so that work in August, at August 12th at the retreat, will take place with the superintendents and business industry partners. I'm sure Steve or myself can report back to you on the results of that. And then we'll be working diligently between that August date and potential decision date of November 2025 to recommend what direction we head. That's all I have for you.
Are there any comments or questions? I know I have at least one. Susan?
Thank you for the great presentation, and I always love hearing about CTE programs here and across the districts in Washtenaw County. I'm glad that you're heading that up. So just a really quick question on the training program for the CTE teachers. You know, you say that, I think that's great that you're going to help them with like the pedagogy and how to, teach the classes and stuff. A lot of professors who get their PhD in, I'll tell you, my wife in civil and environmental engineering, there were actually engineering education classes that she could take, but a lot of times they don't teach, they go straight into teaching university classes without having no information about how to teach, right? So I think that's exciting that you've already thought about that, and you're gonna help them be the best teachers that they can
Yeah.
be.
Thank
So,
you very much.
thanks.
Yeah, it's fine if you're cool with it. All right, I would like to follow up on that and say, okay, I have two questions. So the first one kind of piggybacks off that idea, and it's about how can we offer, though, more continuous professional development and mentorship for these individuals who could be maybe partnered. I'm just spitballing here, like a partnership between the pedagogy expert, if you will, a teacher, and then the CTE expert, and bring them together. So I guess I'd want to continue or hear about, like, if there's any interest in continuing those conversations, so it doesn't just become a one-size-fits-all. July, go be a teacher.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So to answer that one, when I was the executive director and I had a 22-year-old new teacher that had a certification, was coming in to teach, I would pair that individual with a mentor, often a veteran, but a master teacher. I'll take Nate Bush, for instance.
Yeah.
Nate Bush, there's not one day you walk into Nate Bush's classroom or lab and there's downtime. He knows what he's doing every day, every minute. It's all intentional. So to pair Nate Bush with a brand new CTE teacher, he understands technical education, but he also gets the pedagogy as well. So I think we're very deliberate in that approach, Brad, where I can talk about the pacing guides and such, where then Nate can take that to the next level on an ongoing basis.
Okay, I wouldn't mind. Just it would be nice to see that
Yeah.
support and
Mhm.
how it's
Yeah.
delivered. So, and then the other thing is my antenna goes up just slightly. About I think it's great. I think it's important to hire from industry because those are the experts and those are the people doing it. But then how does, and this is more for the community too to hear about highly qualified status and how that all kind of functions together with it.
Yep, so very complex with career technical education, vocational certification. If you are starting from scratch, you would go through a traditional route. Let's just take Western Michigan University. They would take an individual teacher and they have 10 years to earn their bachelor's degree in teacher education and a vocational certification on top of that. If a teacher already has a bachelor's degree, let's just say they have a culinary arts bachelor's degree, then they can take 3 classes towards their vocational certification. So it's scaffold based on their education and experience at that point in time. And so, and there's universities, Eastern's one of those, and several others, that offer occupational certification and cater to that approach, knowing where they're coming from. Yep.
First of all, welcome back to
Thank
Saline
you.
Area Schools.
Thank you.
It's great
Thank
to
you.
see you. I wanted to learn a little bit more about the August 12th Business Industry Roundtable, and if the public was invited to that, if we were invited to that, and what could we do to bring, because several of us work in industry where we know businesses in these fields, and what could we do to support bringing more industry? You mentioned Toyota Tech. I mean, Hyundai's here in Superior Township, I think it is. Like, what else could we do to bring in more to support these?
Thank you. That's a great question. So we had we had Whole Mind Design located in Ann Arbor facilitate 2 think tank sessions. And what we did was we brought individuals together from United Way, South Central Michigan Works, Southeastern Michigan Works, U of M Health. We brought folks together from community organizations like the Kiwanis Clubs, together, just 12 individuals to kind of frame what experiential and applied learning looks like. And that, kind of when you do research, and you know this, you reach a saturation point. So we kind of know what we would like to see from business, industry, community, and the educational realm. But now with this August 12th meeting, it's bringing, our superintendents were not part of that think tank. Pretty strategically, we didn't want the educators to lead the education, we wanted business industry to have a voice in that. So the business industry folks that were at that think tank will be working and educating the superintendents the morning of August 12th. And out of that meeting, we will ask for who should be at the table on an ongoing basis working towards that November date. So I'll share information with Steve regarding the August 12th date. And if you have individuals that you think should be at the table for August 12th, fantastic, from business, industry, or the community. And then if they can't do the August 12th, they could be participating on an ongoing basis a couple times a month leading to that decision day. So I'll share all that with Steve to share with you in great detail.
That's awesome. And if you could just a follow-up question, if you could define the persona of like not only the industry or the organization, like this would be a wonderful company, but like the persona within that
Yep.
organization,
Yep.
like a VP of operations,
Right.
CHRO, like,
You got it.
okay, thanks.
Will do. Thank you.
So a couple of things. I was just going to piggyback off of what you said. My daughter is in a relatively new nursing program in her college. The college used to collaborate with all other universities to have a shared nursing program, and now they're on their own, so they're facing the same thing. And I keep saying to my daughter, they can be a really good nurse and not know how to teach nursing.
that's
So give them a little grace while they're learning
right.
and support them
Yeah,
in their learning
that's-
too. But that can be
yeah.
a little bit of a learning curve for some of our students too, who are used to
Absolutely.
highly functioning teachers.
Yes.
So yeah, I think that's an industry situation when we're getting into specific content areas. I also liked the idea, especially when we're talking about continuous improvement. The idea of the boot camp is fabulous. And then just thinking, and I know like the mentorship program. And I think even for our veteran teachers, there's always new things to learn.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
that ongoing continuous improvement, I know that's a part of your plan and has been for the duration of the time that I've known you. So I trust that that's embedded. And I know with all of the new, here we have the instructional designers. I'm sure there are people at the ISD that can support some of that overarching pedagogy too, through individual sessions or coaching, things like that. I wanted to just throw out, if you would like to get in touch with someone who has some insight on the aviation industry.
Yes, please.
My husband is a pilot, so
Okay.
he has worked both in the corporate and commercial aspects of that, and also has worked closely with not as closely with Eastern, but has been a visitor at the Eastern program and is graduated from Western and remains in contact with their education people. He has contacts with minorities in aviation and women in aviation, both organizations who have lots of funding dollars, who would love to support historically marginalized students in building aviation careers. So if that's someone that I could help connect you with, so he can connect you with others, get in touch with me, and I'll make that connection.
Yep, I will send that information to Steve, and
Okay.
then I'll have you just filter it through, because
Perfect.
that's exactly who we're looking for. I think.
He's off on the 12th, so I'll
Okay.
plant the seed.
Perfect, thank you. What we need folks to understand, and I know that you do, is that every student can benefit from experiential and applied
Yes.
learning.
Yes.
And when we think about CTE specifically, and we're focused on career tech, we think 11th and 12th graders with career technical education. We're talking much beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking a pre-K through 12th grade continuum. And so when we think about that, and we think about how could drones in aviation be infused in third grade classrooms, leading to a career in aviation, and we could use a lot of other examples, that's really what we're looking at. And I know this Board of Education understands it, but we need every citizen in Washtenaw County to understand that.
Part of it is the identity, like
Yeah.
identifying yourself as someone who could be in that field too. Last week, my kids participated in a dance. They have been under contract with some dancers in LA, and so my son was finishing his contract. He's no longer going to be a dancer like he has been. He's going to focus his efforts in dive. But one of the things that the owner of that organization said to him is, the work ethic and the learning is the work ethic and the learning. So take this work ethic and learning and apply it to what you're going to do next. And I think that's what the beauty is of CTE. We're giving these kids experiences. And should they decide to pursue engineering, they've got a great foundation. Should they decide to take the work that they've done in engineering and pursue culinary arts, they know how to learn and be learners.
Yeah.
So I think, it's a great foundation, and it's a great way for students to visualize a path toward their future. So thank you for the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Miller. Did you want something, Tim?
Just not much, but the boot camp, I really like that idea. And then also, I just want to thank you for your vision in all this, because I think Saline, we take with the consortium, we take it for granted that other people in other districts have very limited resources to CTE. So I know your passion for CTE, and I think it's awesome that you're trying to somehow bring that all under not maybe one envelope, but so that every student can have that opportunity. And there's great earning potential for every student in this, and lot of potential, I guess. So thanks.
Yeah, our youth today can do whatever they'd like. There's a variety of ways to get there. And so we want them to consider when they approach that high school graduation stage, what's the most value-added approach to college and career? And hopefully they have options that they're choosing. They're empowered to choose that path that they want to take.
Excellent. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. I do have a quick, if you could just elaborate a little on where aviation fits with the CTE kids. So we got like aviation that leads to pilot certification, to drone certification, to drones as surveying tools, and then avionics versus aircraft maintenance. So what is it that we hope to, all of it?
So I think right now, Mike, we're at the very beginning of all of that. We're exploring, FAA is involved, and Willow Run is involved, and I think to a various degree, we could have all of that taking place within Washtenaw County. I think aviation mechanic is certainly in the realm. I think pilots are certainly in the realm, and I think that drone technology, from photography to building maintenance to agri-science, is applicable.
Right.
So again, I think those transferable skills can be to a variety of different career clusters, but everything that you just mentioned, I think, is going to be explored in the next few months regarding aviation.
I appreciate that. And the other question is, because the aviation program, you touched on EMU's, Eastern Michigan University's program, which I know fairly well, they have a great deal of equipment already and trainers and that sort of thing. I'm wondering, because they're not part of the consortium directly, are they people you can still reach out to?
Yeah, we are.
And you are. Thank you.
Yep.
That's
Thanks.
great. Superintendent Lodge.
I just wanted to say that this is one of the few, since I've been superintendent, which hasn't been that long, but we've been working as county superintendents to sort of come up with that one focus that truly would help all our students in Washtenaw County. This has been it. And, to Ryan's credit, he's demonstrated so much value as the SWWC director that the superintendents could then project out, well, what would happen if we created this new position to expand these offerings to what Tim just said, or Trustee Austin just said, to students that don't have these opportunities? Because there have been so many studies, including the U of M study, that shows that really kids are participating, in large scale if they have the programs locally. So if you do, Lincoln and Ipsy specifically, where they really do need more opportunities for their students. So we've really come together as a county as saying, these are Washtenaw County students. They're not Saline students, they're not Chelsea students, Washtenaw County students. And so Ryan's position really has been focused on that. And we feel it's just a great direction. We're really proud of the direction, which also speaks to the need for a countywide millage, because to expand programs, anytime you want to run a new course like drones, for example, that's like $200,000 in cost to get those off the ground. So if we want to expand, it is going to cost money to do that in the future. So,
well said.
We have some follow-up questions.
This just got me thinking. And not that we have to answer this, but after spending 5 years on the finance committee, I guess I think about revenue generation, and I think about our budget overall, understanding that we want to make as much impact as we can to serve our students and have a really comprehensive course catalog for our high school learners, but as we drill down and cascade within middle school and down. But has it been considered to offer some of the programming additionally for charge, like through a community ed or something like that, that would help supplement school districts and budget challenges that they might be having? Like as a revenue generation model, like this thinking about a for-profit piece of it, not taking away at all from the students or districts that we are serving, but another layer. So morphing into a bit of a for-profit.
Yeah, eventually. I think we're getting to, we've expanded, and I think we're getting to a tipping point overall where there's a reason why this map exists and why the red areas are getting limited, because they understand that we're getting to a tipping point where we can't we have a student go through a cybersecurity program and through high school become certified for cybersecurity and say, I want to go work for Saline area schools and I can make really good money doing it. You're in desperate need of a technician. And the certification costs $500 in high school. We're supporting that financially now. And so I think the vocational millage would offset some of those costs. And then I think we need to look at other areas, you know, potentially including what you're mentioning, our partnership with Washington Community College, our partner with post-secondary institutions, our partners with business industry. I think we need to consider everything at this point in time because we are really meeting that tipping point.
Well, I'd like to thank you very much for coming tonight.
Thank you.
You've filled our heads with visions of sugar plums and great CTE program, and appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Have a great evening. Appreciate it.
We have two more I think a little tape just went off in my head as I was saying visions. Anyway, we have two more reports, and Dr. Lotch is going to lead us through both of them.
Start with a bullying report. However, I did want to point out that for our core team, I did want to welcome Julie Volker, who's here tonight. We had stated that when we formed the new executive director of special education, we felt that that position was very important to be part of the core team. And so she's representing the special education department here tonight. And then just of note, Carol and Betty and Rex are on vacation. So anyway, welcome, Julie. So this first report, the bullying report, is an annual report that we are presenting, and it's associated with MCL section 380.1310B. And that is specifically a procedure for each public school to document any prohibited incident that's reported and a procedure to report all verified incidents of bullying and the resulting consequences, including discipline and referrals, to the board of the school district or intermediate school district or board of directors of the public school academy on an annual basis. So this is the annual report that we started that last year. And then as a result of reporting it last year, we've had to make some modifications so that we are more accurate with reporting and whatnot. And so one of those changes we made, if you can recall last year, I spoke about how Power School, where we put discipline, only allows you to choose one incident to report. So a scenario where let's just say two students would be they get in a fight, for example, and then we want to report that that fighting was the reason that they had a referral and they were disciplined for this. However, we felt that one of the students was being bullied, and that's the result of the fight. So now we've changed the reporting mechanism so that all our principals and assistant principals have been directed to describe the scenario in a note section in Power School and use the term bullying if they feel that there is an association with it. And so as a result of that, when Betty Yankee goes to run the SID report, which is where we report that type of data at the end of the year, it will now gather that. So it's more comprehensive in the way we're pulling that information out. And so that will be reflected in this report for this year. Okay, so with that said, we will take a look. The other thing that I thought it was important to do was to categorize the different ways that students or people are bullied and recognize that there are different ways and different shapes that shows up in the district. So although this isn't part of the requirements, I did go through and categorize the incidents that I read about in Power School, because in order for me, I'm making some generalizations with the data to say this one is associated with this type of bullying. Anyway, so there are these 5 categories. Verbal bullying includes name calling, derogatory language, and offensive comments. Social bullying, which includes excluding someone from a group or activity or public humiliation. Physical bullying, which would include what we would know hitting, kicking, tripping, or other physical violence. Cyberbullying, social media, whatnot, includes sending electronic messages that threaten or harass someone. And then we also have a category, hate speech or discrimination, which would include using language that attacks a person or a group on the basis of attributes such as race, religion, ethnic origin, national origin, sex, disability, sexual orientation, or gender identity. So as you see the report coming next, which will show each school how the data was reported, and then there's a category assigned to that. And I will say I assigned the category, so it's not a perfect science, but that's how I approached it this year. Okay, so we start with Harvest, and there was one incident. It was a physical bullying situation, and the disciplinary consequence was a safety plan created in collaboration with administration to address bullying behaviors. Move on to Pleasant Ridge. They also had a physical bullying situation, and that phone call home to address the situation. And you might say, well, why is that one different than the other one? Because there's different degrees of bullying as determined by the building principal after they investigated it. Willow Meadows with 3 physical bullying, all 3 of them. Disciplinary consequences there were phone calls home, restorative practices, out of school suspension, and then 2 in-school suspensions in this situation. With Heritage, 12 incidents reported. 5 were verbal bullying, 4 social bullying, 1 physical bullying, and 2 cyberbullying. And sometimes they would cross over, but I did my best to categorize the type of bullying based on the comments in Power School. And then the disciplinary consequences here were phone calls and emails home, a number of lunch detentions. In one case, it was a bus situation where a seat was assigned. And then there were also apology letters involved and a number of in-school suspensions. Saline Middle School, 22 reported incidents in Power School associated with bullying. Again, what I did want to point out here is there may have been another coded consequence as the primary reason in Power School, but this captured all the Power School comments. So I didn't differentiate whether it was in the comments of Power School within that, or it was the actual reason as the reason for the disciplinary consequence. And this included a number of verbal bullying situations, social bullying 1 time, physical bullying 5, cyberbullying 3, and in this case, an incident of hate speech. And then a variety of disciplinary consequences from warnings to lunch detentions, in school and out of school suspension, number of restorative sessions, apologies, and a couple of times conferences with parents specifically. At the high school, 20 incidences, 12 verbal, social bullying 1 time, physical bullying 3, cyberbullying 2, hate speech discrimination reported twice. And then you'll see the consequences there. A lot of detentions, some in and out of school suspension, not as much as the middle school, for example. A couple things that happened on the bus here resulted in bus suspension and movement of a seat on the bus. Alternative High School reported 2, 1 verbal, 1 cyberbullying, and out of school suspensions. In this case, it was the same situation with a couple of students, so kind of blended together. Okay, so as a result, an important part is what are we trying to do about the bullying that goes on in the district? We definitely are taking action. And I do think something, though, that was important that Melissa, you pointed out, which I think is very astute, and we need to address this, and that is the sort of sly or different under the radar ways in which kids are being mean or doing bullying. And as a result, we really need to look at, well, what are the proactive measures that we're doing to make sure that all our students know that they're doing this and that we are educating in ways that were more proactive, especially earlier on in the process. And you'll see here that the middle school is being, my last slide of the night is middle school related, and specifically how they're trying to adjust their approach to helping with an anti-bullying program. Anyway, so there's a number of here that are listed here, including our culturally responsive instructional model that we're seeking trusted adults. And this is something that you said Deneen had reported about how, back a number of years ago, we had a very low percentage of students reported that they had trusted adults. That has now risen quite significantly. And so we feel like that's very important. Again, social work and counseling support, SEL lessons through SEL coaches. We have currently 3 SEL coaches in the district funded with SEL money, which is a concern because that has gotten eliminated from this upcoming state budget, but more about that to come later. Social thinking curriculum at the elementary schools, and that these SEL supports coming at advisory time at the middle school and Hornet time at the high school. We also have Web and Link Crew, which are our transitional programs that are helping kids assimilate into the middle school and high school. And then Saline Middle School specific, this Be Good People curriculum. At the high school, did Rachel's Challenge this year, which was an effort to better support an anti-bullying campaign. And then a number of other things on the right side here, Speak Up protocol, community meetings around PBIS, restorative practices, the conflict resolution series that we've been running, U of M peer-to-peer depression awareness program, and of course the Bridge to Civility that we continue to work on. Specifically to the middle school, and I know this is somewhat difficult to read, but they have an approach that they are working on next year with the realization that the middle school is a real key area where students are, I would say, very focused on the need to fit in, friendships, and there is quite a bit of insecurity at this level. Therefore, really have to focus on this at the middle school, because by the time kids are at the high school, I'm not saying it's too late, but they've already established some of these patterns of behavior and making decisions on their own, and we feel that the middle school is a real key area to really get after this work. And so you can see that they're taking an approach next year to put greater emphasis on the plan to combat bullying. So with that said, that's what we have about that, and I can go ahead and take questions, and then we're going to move into the listening session report and the perceptions of equity survey, which will also coincide with some of this work. You'll see a pattern of things that we need to work on.
Great.
So,
Well, we'll open up the table to questions.
So Steve, you kind of answered some of it, because I was kind of looking back and looking at the history of the report, the reported numbers, and 5, 24, 61. But it sounds like you've made more of an emphasis on how they're coding things, so you can, it's not like it jumped almost 3 times from one year to the other. Most likely, is that what you're thinking? Or?
Well, I mean, without a jump, you could say, well, we're making better gains around it because potentially before we were missing areas that were being reported as bullying because we were coding them as fighting or assault or whatever.
That's kind of what
say.
I gathered.
But I don't know how to for sure quantify that. But you're right, it didn't go from 60 incidents to 300 this year. But with that said, I think it does go back to, are there a lot of places where we're missing it? And we do need to work on that. If we're hearing students say that, these kinds of things are happening, and it's very hard for the teachers to identify it because the kids are sometimes being like covert on how they're doing it. We do have to be listening and really looking at that and doing everything we can to help address that.
Yeah, because to some extent, it's pretty subjective to who's involved, the staff that's around, and how they're coding it. So that was my biggest concern, is looking back at the numbers in 5, 24, 61. I was like, wow, this is a big jump. But you've kind of explained that you've started coding things a little bit different. So it's easier to see in Power School when you're pulling them up, which is good to know. Because we've been throwing a lot of money at social and emotional learning coaches and all these other things. And so if it continues to go up, then we got to maybe question.
Yeah, we want some data to demonstrate that we're having an impact.
Directions. Yes. Thanks.
Yeah, I would support that.
Just really quick. I want to, state that I appreciate our district's, efforts, and I appreciate your efforts to break it down so that we can see patterns and we can see different types of behaviors, and we can maybe focus our efforts more. And that's what I like about the idea of breaking it down into, if we want to call it categories or whatever. But I appreciate that. But this is ongoing work, right? This is day in, day out, ongoing work for teachers, for staff, for students, for administrators, for everybody. So I appreciate the people that are in the trenches and doing that work. And I also want to note that it takes tremendous courage for those people, those individuals, to come forth and to speak about what's happening and what's real and what have you. And that's an important piece of this. I want to make sure that I say, not just because we had an individual who was courageous enough to come and talk to us tonight, but just in general. The more that we know, the more we're able to then say, we don't want that behavior to continue. So I appreciate that. And, we want to be partners with families and with students and all that. So thank you.
Jenny Miller, I think.
Yeah, I wanted to acknowledge that I feel like the report this year was responsive to some of the concerns around the nature of reporting and the numbers last year. So I feel like we're getting to a more realistic view of what is actually happening. So I appreciate the modifications and the way that things have been adjusted to have this more comprehensive report. It's also interesting, as Brad was saying, just that the work is ongoing and it's never done. And I was thinking specifically around like cyberbullying, which wasn't a thing when we were in school, and how we have to constantly be, flexible in our thinking around what is included in this realm. And one of the ways that we can do that is with feedback from students and families. And so we appreciate when students and families come forward and let us know that things are happening, so that those things can be thought about in different ways. I do want to put out a challenge, and I know it's a challenge for everyone involved, but more and more I hear reports from students and families, and so I'm going to go out on a limb here and just say I'm hearing reports more and more from students at the high school that the advisory time is not being used the way that we would like for it to be used, or the way that it's being leveraged, for example, in this scenario. And I don't want to put fault or put blame on anyone. I just wonder if it might be something that we could think about, because as I have been wondering about it, as people have been talking to me, I know it's a burden on our teaching staff, because it's another prep that they have to, and it might be an area that's not a content area, expertise area for them. And so I am thinking and wondering if there might be an opportunity for some of we have an abundance of clubs and organizations that have come to talk to us. Like, for example, you mentioned one of the partnerships with U of M, that I believe it's the same, the U of M peer-to-peer program. I think it's one of the clubs brought that to us earlier this year in one of their presentations. So I just wonder if we might be able to leverage some of the organizations that are already in place so that there isn't an increased burden on our staff, but there's an opportunity for students to have some learning around some of these areas. I know Connecting Club did a presentation this year, so is there a way for us to follow that model to again, create an opportunity for learning, to create an example, or to create an opportunity for ongoing continuous improvement in this area without overburdening a staff that already gives 110% every day. So just something to think about.
Okay, yeah, and I can write that down and talk to him. I do think it's important that I address the cyberbullying part, because I think you bring up that good point that is another challenge for our administration, especially when some of that cyberbullying is, most of it is happening outside of school hours. And then we have to try to determine, is this coming into the school at a level that we would discipline at it, or does it need to involve the police? So we've had a number of situations like that where our building principals and assistant principals are doing the best they can to manage that, but that is very challenging because the vast majority it's not happening during the school day.
Well, and I think, like, in addition to cyberbullying being not contained in the school day, it does appear, just as our student shared with us tonight, that while it may originate in one area, say PE, it's continuing in texting or purchasing cookies, or, so it's not contained in one area. So how do we impact the social dynamics in our school and community at large? So it's great to have a partnership with the DEI at the city, and I appreciate that they're continuing to have an impact on our community at large, while we can coordinate efforts here. And I do think that, in large part, looking at the way things are coded, that there is an element of diversity, equity, inclusion that could be addressed with some of these. So thanks.
Did you have anything to add? Susan?
So I have, a lot, but I'll just try to, I have some questions that I'll touch on. So regarding the hate, well, okay. So I guess to begin, so the person who is responsible for taking the reports and investigations in the building, which is the principal or another admin, so they must report to the superintendent all reported bullying, all verified bullying, and then remedial action, which you've added here this year, which is great, which would include disciplinary and referral. Referral maybe leads into my next question. Which regards the hate speech, I was shocked to see only 2 incidents in the middle school and 2 in the high school and 1 in the middle school. When we've had students come here over the past year with BSU and with hopefully response to that. I don't know where we're on that with the handbook. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, why don't I respond to that first? Because, okay, this starts with the keyword of bullying, and then it was sorted out just by me to say, did that fall into hate speech or not? There probably are other documented things in Power School that potentially say hate speech, but they don't use the term bullying, so they don't show up in the bullying report. So it's nuanced in that I created what I thought that bullying was associated with. There could be, I'll just throw this number out there, there could be 20 incidents of hate speech or discrimination that the building principals put somewhere in Power School. But if the term bullying isn't used, it wasn't getting associated in this report.
So then this really isn't accurate at all, if that's, I guess
Well,
the building person's supposed to report it to you, but you are just pulling from the overall district Power School.
Yeah, okay, but the interpretation of that is that the superintendent or building administration would use the Power School record to gather that data. In other words, yes, I could have talked to each individual principal about each incident, but I felt that I could get that information from Power School and assemble it that same way. I wouldn't say that this information isn't relevant. I'm just trying to state that there could be other incidents of hate speech being used that weren't coded with bullying. And so I reported what was listed as bullying.
Okay, so then the building, like the principals or whoever aren't reporting it to you? Like, do they know that there's I assume an expectation that they tag bullying for these incidents? Or
Yes, because I said I directed them this year to say I would like bullying listed as a phrase in the description if they felt that it was somehow the event was associated with bullying. And so I am putting some trust in the principals. And as when I was putting this report together, I did share it out with them and ask them to provide any other feedback that they wanted to provide. And then I'm presenting it to you tonight. So they did look at the report as well.
okay, great. I mean, that's what it says, that they report it to you. So, so does this data include then, well, I guess if they don't put bullying on it, harassment that goes on based on protected classes? Does that capture any of this data here, or?
Well, it's based on if I can't answer that specifically other than to say the way we put the report together was I took any incident in Power School that said the term bullying in it, compiled the report, and compared it back and shared it back with our building administration to provide feedback. I don't know the answer to that on whether all of it was captured or not. If it wasn't associated with the term bullying, then it wasn't in this report.
Okay, so you're not communicating with, well, I guess Title IX type things and all of that with this. So it's like separate, just building based, not like from the office or?
I complied with the procedure for each public school to verify incidents of bullying and the resulting consequences, including discipline or referral. So that's what I did.
All right. Well, I encourage you to look at how we can capture that data on the harassment with hate speech and acts. So, because I know that's something that with the 3-year plan and the DEIAC, you know, how do we capture that data so we can decrease what is happening in the schools to, you know, children who have disabilities who are being harassed, LGBTQ students, race, ethnicity. You know, I think that's definitely data we need to pull and figure out how to do that.
I mean, and another way I could do is just get rid of that categorizing all data and just call it bullying, if people would like that as a better way to report it. I added that element this year to the report to try to provide more detail.
Yeah, and I
But
know
if people
some
feel
schools
like
didn't
it's
even
too
do Power
confusing.
School. Some schools use at least I know in the middle school, the last year, they do like a Google Doc or something. So, I mean, I'm not glad that there's more data on bullying, but there's actually more data. So, I mean.
Okay. But I can encourage us to share. I think what you're asking is me to go back to the building principals and say they need to do a better job of including any harassment data associated with bullying. Is that what you're asking?
I'm asking for us to capture data, more data, like specific data. If they're not putting bullying for hate speech and acts or sexual harassment, what have you, how are we capturing that data?
Okay, I can ask them.
I'm not telling you to tell them to do anything. I just want the data, or
Okay.
think it's important. And then I had, where did it go? Yeah, because I know from last year to this year, like you said, it increased like over 200%. And I know there has been data that were captured in the past, and so I'm not sure how that was recorded. I know last year was the first time that we actually received a report from you, and I don't recall having one from Superintendent Graydon, but that information was reported. But still, from 2019, it appears that, taking out that kind of COVID period, that it still has increased 27%. But yeah, thanks for getting that data. So when, like Rachel's challenge, like that was put on there, from my understanding, that's like a one-time event. I don't know if anything was done beyond that in the classes. I've received feedback from the advisory. I've heard it from students' mouths that the advisory and Hornet time is not, they're not talking about anti-bullying. A lot of times the students tell you, like, I don't know what we did, or, it's a short period of time and everything. And I've heard also teachers express, I guess, concerns with whether everybody's implementing it the same. And so yeah, I guess when I do see some of these things, I don't necessarily, I see that it's trying to be proactive in, like, I guess, social development, but social emotional development, but I don't see, like, the actual anti-bullying prevention programs. And so, are we educating our professional staff members on how to intervene? I think since we don't have the number here of everything, like all the bullying that has been reported, we're missing a good chunk of maybe some of those things that have been reported from students about, this group of kids doing, something to another group of kids or individual, but they're like, well, we have no proof. Well, we don't even hear that there's, like, reports about it, right? So, I think that's hard to capture in the data, but I think that goes on where, maybe a teacher reports something to the principal and there's just not enough information, or, how are we handling those, the culture, the entire culture, and how are we responding to, the bullying and harassment, so.
Thank you. Jennifer? Oh,
I just wanted to ask you if you could just speak for a minute, maybe anecdotally even, because you stated that the report was more comprehensive this time, that you were able to pull different kinds of coding, because before it was only coded one way. Now you were able to pull things that were coded multiple ways, so it would increase the data because we're able to find more things. So an increase of 27%. So I know and trust that you are in constant communication with the building principals and dean of students and the people who are most often guidance counselors, who are most often in position to support students with potential bullying. So anecdotally, just seeing that increase in numbers could be alarming to people, but from your perspective as the leader of the district, has there been a 0.25% increase in bullying, or has there been? 200. Oh, okay, thank you. I misunderstood what you said. 2019. Gotcha. Okay, so, sorry. Anyways, so there's been a significant increase in the numbers. However, that is due to this more comprehensive report. So, can you speak to how the programming with the SEL coaches and with, people who are in positions to support students, how that is having an impact on the day-to-day occurrences. And not that the work is ever done, as you said, it's continuous improvement. But I just would like for you to maybe have an opportunity to speak to that, since the numbers by themselves tell a story.
Yeah, I think that I guess I would argue that if we were reporting it the same way the previous year, it probably would have looked about the same, because again, with Power School only allowing you to select one primary issue, you know, it's subjective to some degree on what's the most important or what's the most significant issue that you enter there. And so this year we were trying to be more comprehensive with reporting. It likely would have looked like that the previous year too, had we made that change earlier. With that said, what are we trying to do about it? Yes, the SEL coach's primary focus is to be proactive in nature about providing lessons to students, sometimes classroom lessons, sometimes individual, about a lot of it is how to be nice to people, respect, empathy, appreciating each other's differences. And I think when you look at what the middle school is trying to do next year, they're trying to be more comprehensive with that, because the more proactive we are with education, the more likely we will have an impact on bullying and those types of things with our students as they go on. I believe strongly, now that I've seen data and have talked to our building principals for years, that this middle school state, especially when kids are coming in 6th grade, is a real critical time. Not to say that it's not, you know, super important at heritage level or high school, but I'm going to equate it back to why we spend so much money and put so much support into early literacy. Because there's a lot of data that supports that we need to get at it early enough before 3rd grade for kids to be, you know, as proficient as possible. Same things applying here too, when students are most vulnerable as it relates to, you know, insecurities of developing friendships and transition to the middle school level. I just strongly believe like we need to put a lot of resource and effort forth there. And I believe strongly that Kim and Lindsay and the social workers and counselors and SEL coaches are doing that moving forward.
And then lastly, because it was brought up, and I hope that you're not, that you're okay with us referring back to your comment, because we were really listening. But I want to make sure that first and foremost, our students feel heard and valued. And so could you just, for Melissa and for Melissa and her peers, I know we have the okay to say app and way of reporting, but what are some other ways that they can report when they feel bullied, or who are the safe people that they can, if they have not already identified someone, who are the safe people that they can reach out to that are in positions to support?
Yeah, I mean, we like to say they go find that trusted adult and report that, but we also would like our students to believe that any building administrator, counselor, social worker is available to talk to them about any specific issue that's going on related to that. Now, some other areas are some of those groups you spoke about, whether they're involved in a club, like Bridget Sparks, Students Against Racism, find a club that you go to. We've been talking to our students at both Uproar and the GSA at the middle school. We've been to multiple meetings to hear from those students. And our BSU, for example, is another area that we would want a safe space for people to report to. So we do feel like there are a number of avenues that students can take, but you always have to be working on it, because I mean, the goal is to have 100% of our students feel that there's somebody out there that they can report this to, and that they will take action, because we don't want students to feel that, hey, there's a lot of this going on and people aren't listening to us.
Go ahead, Brad.
So thank you for saying that. I just wanted to say also on the slide, ongoing strategies, the Speak Up protocol, I have heard students at the high school exhibit and illustrate how to do that, and I am so proud when they do that. The more students that stand up and interrupt microaggressions, examples of bullying and harassment, etc., the better off we are. So thank you to those students who personify that strategy.
Treasurer Gerby had a comment.
Well, I just want to make sure that this kind of piggybacks right on that idea about speak up protocols. And I also don't want to sell short the efforts of our web, our link crew, our students who are out there, our staff who are trying to have, perspective and listen, and we can always do better. Like I've said, we can always look to improve, we can always be, but at the same time, I really, really want to make sure we don't sell short the fact that we are doing a lot of things with professional development sessions and around restorative practices, speak up protocols, and I really do appreciate, I think our web and our link crew are really good. The whole idea, I run a link crew, the whole idea of link crew is about wanting to develop connections, and when you develop connections and foster good connections, then you have pride for your school, you have pride for each other, you build each other up, and so my hope is also that through our web and our link crews and through these speak up protocols, we're developing a whole army, if you will, of students who are out there for each other, right?
Yeah.
And I just don't want to sell that short. I just want to make sure I say that out loud as part of my comment.
You want to add something? Go ahead.
Yeah, I forgot to add that Heritage had also sent something out about to parents about hate speech increasing at Heritage, and the principals sent out some amazing resources about how to address that with their children. I thought that was wonderful. I do remember there was kind of criticism about at the high school, some stuff had went out over incidents and things going out to the parents, but not the same information going out to the students to address it. I don't remember if that was this year or last year, but that had come up as well. But I think it's important actually communicating, these things. I think the Speak Up is used at Heritage and used to be for I don't know how long it was, but at the middle school. But I don't think it's something that happens now. It's good if it's being implemented at the high school. That's awesome. So you have your upstanders, so yeah, I just think, I think we need to talk about it, right? I think I do hear about students who won't report at all because they don't want to get retaliated against. They don't, want to be like the tattletale. They don't want to get harmed by the person that they tell on. So, it's really, I think those upstanders, bystanders, and taking action is super important in getting that information out there. So, yeah, just something I wanted to add.
To Susan's point then, just to wrap up, then I absolutely agree. You can't report in a report like this unless it's reported up the chain, so to speak. I wanted to also say first of all, thank you so much. This is very proactive, and I heard the word proactive a couple times, and I absolutely appreciate that. I want to ask you later about restorative practices and how effective they are, but not now. But having done a lot of qualitative analyses before of data like these, it's tricky, absolutely tricky, and I applaud you for taking a stab at it as well. Like, for example, so many of these things can be unpacked. So when you talk about cyberbullying or social bullying, it says there's one incident, but we know that because it's dealing with groups or activities or public humiliation, that more are involved, far more are involved than just one person. So how do we count that? Do we count it by incident? Do we count it by individuals? The same with cyberbullying. If a message goes out from somebody, that's one instance, but it's going to many people, and they're all then suddenly involved. Do we count them as how do they get counted? So I absolutely recognize and appreciate that. I was curious about one thing. I noticed that the phone calls to parents kind of dropped off after Heritage. Is that because they just don't work at the middle school, or because a phone call to parents is just understood that it's going to happen?
And some of it's that it's not reported that way in Power School. At that level, it probably still occurred, but they're primarily documenting, for example, if a student gets an in-school suspension, their parent knows about it.
Of course.
But
Okay.
anyway, again, that's something we could clean up next year to sort of verify, hey, do all these get a phone call? It's likely they do, but again, I was pulling specific data from the Power School report
Right.
and then confirming it back with the principals.
I've been with my students many times in the vice principal's office or the principal's office, and the most terrifying thing you can do is just take the phone and turn it around, and then the kid has to phone home. You know, it's a terrifying thing, and you hope that your parents never find out, but they do.
Michael, per policy, it is for each parent to be contacted. That's a requirement.
If.
Not as far as
If, what, when?
bullying,
Okay.
which doesn't, I can confirm that doesn't happen always, but that's a requirement.
Understood. But anyway, I just want to say thank you for being proactive, and thank you for tackling this. And I know this is a work in progress, and as we move along, the reporting will improve, and I appreciate that greatly. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next presentation. Let me back it up here. Okay, this is a long report, so I will do my best to summarize the overview. But I'll start with saying that Ryan Kerr helped put all this data together. He can't be here tonight because he's on a family vacation out west, so hopefully he's having fun with that. But one of the things that I'll talk about throughout the report is many of the goals that Ryan will have this year are going to be based on data that's coming out of the listening sessions. 3 areas: the listening sessions, the perception of equity survey, and another that I didn't mention in this title, but you'll see in the report, and that is visits with the Black Student Union and also GSA and Uproar at the high school level, or middle school and high school level. So we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, so we had 5 listening sessions where myself, Ryan Kerr were there, and then we had representatives from the city of Saline, Kimberly, and a DEI committee, and then also some representatives from Pittsfield Township, which was nice too, because the idea was to hear from all these different perspectives on not only what is going well or needs improvement in the schools, but what also is going well or needs improvement within the community. I will say, in complete transparency, the vast majority of the focus was on the schools. In other words, that's just what parents wanted to talk about. So, but with that said, community members can learn a fair amount from that as well. And so here's the list of sessions we had. I will point out that I would not say they were, 32 unique participants in the 5 sessions. And what that means is some people came multiple times to different groups, which was perfectly fine. But I always like to consider that the feedback we're getting is from a fairly smaller group, whereas the perception of equity survey, that feedback's coming from a larger body, a population. So I just wanted to point out like how many attended each session and then how many unique participants we had in total. The overall general themes, and Ryan did a good job of categorizing, like here's what we overall deemed were positives and what were sort of some key areas that we need to focus in, more general themes that need improvement. So for the positives, the existence of affinity and support groups. We did hear from especially our students in GSA Uproar and BSU at the high school that those support groups are really important for them. And so we need to make sure, for example, at the middle school, we had a BSU, our advisor dropped out, and now we need to make sure that we, get that back going again, because our students say these are very important. Positive teacher experiences. Sense of community demonstrated, a positive school environment from a lot of the people. Recognition of the importance of diversity, even though there was a lot of recognition that we're not the most diverse community. And the existing resources in place are a positive. Areas for growth, representation within faculty, we've talked about that, diversifying our faculty. Curriculum inclusivity, microaggressions. You could argue that some of the things we were hearing tonight from Melissa, some of these microaggressions, some of the, it's hard to pick out that that's what's happening, but there's either bullying or acts of racism occurring, and we need to be very aware of how that's playing out. Administrative response can sometimes be improved. This was one that I thought was important that we need to address, and that's support for families new to the district. There were a couple of parents who came to the listening sessions who said, I just wish I had more resources on how to navigate starting in the school district. So that was something we need to be paying attention to. Bullying was brought up. And there was this balancing religious beliefs component that was brought up as well. So those are kind of the general themes and areas that we're doing better in, and areas that need growth or improvement. Okay, so specifically for the listening sessions on Black African American children here, the areas of concern on the left side: racism, lack of Black representation, curriculum not inclusive, microaggressions and racism not always addressed. There was some exhaustion discussed, meaning students don't want to report it because they would hear, and I'll just say some of the things that for example, if the N-word was being used at the high school in the hallways, that students don't want to report it, potentially hear it too often, or it's just part of the culture, which isn't acceptable, and we need to recognize that those are the types of things we need to be very aware of. Desire for change. But positives, we had a number of people talk about how important the BSU is for kids at our high school. And then positive experiences with specific teachers, which they, in the session, were naming or alluding to. I don't want to say that here, but that a number of teachers are really working hard to support our kids, all our kids. Okay, so then we had another racially diverse group that included more Indian, Native American, Asian. We sort of had some groupings together because in the previous listening sessions, we just didn't have enough attendance when we did them all individually. At any rate, this is where we heard about the lack of support for newcomer families, which we need to address. Some experiences with discrimination, a feeling of isolation sometimes, a lack of awareness of district resources. Some good experiences, sense of community, supportive teachers, and a positive school environment. And then we continue on with some suggestions for improvement, a newcomer support group. We used to have that in Saline, especially at our elementary school level. Like, how do we come back and identify specific newcomer groups, especially those in marginalized groups in our community, and provide better support when they enter the school district? International nights, yes, we do one of those for our EL department, but how do we make that more comprehensive across all our buildings and not just for our EL learners? DEI education was brought up, and there was a discussion about conversation starters. People felt that, for example, they brought up that when Jackie and I published the every other week community newsletter, some parents use as a catalyst the things that we report out that we see in classrooms. And they said, well, what if you would put in there conversation starters to get your kids talking about various things in the school district, whether it's racism or any of the topics that we're talking about relating to SEL. How do you get parents talking to their kids about those? Often the parents themselves need some help to get the conversation started. This was the special education group, and again, you'll see a theme of some bullying occurring. the need for more staff training, which we've been making some adjustments on. For example, we've had some training this past year to make sure that all our teachers are doing better with IEP, writing IEPs and implementation. Communication and collaboration, transition planning, that's brought up, honestly, in every group, but especially our special education students when they're transitioning from one building to another. That's very difficult. The opportunities limited for post-secondary students. And again, I just brought up that compliance with 504 and IEP. We're dialed into that next year in terms of getting a lot of focus on who's supporting the direction and lead of our 504s to make sure that they're being consistently implemented across the district. Positive experience. I was brought up over and over again that many families are still moving to Saline for its reputation on serving students with disabilities, and that continues to be the case. Specific teachers named as very supportive. And then we looked at some resources. These were resources provided to us by a number of parents who were attending that were very knowledgeable in this area. And so I'm not going to read through all of them, but these were some good resources and some suggestions that we can be working on. For our LGBTQIA plus session, again, you'll see the bullying and harassment concern, lack of support, feeling unsafe. We do need to work on the whole safety component. That's key, that our kids do feel safe in the school district. Some talk about limited visibility and representation, and that some difficulties with clubs and activities, not so much attending GSA or Uproar, but other groups and clubs, feeling more welcome to do that. And then positive experiences, the diversity hub at the high school, the GSA, and Pride Month activities were things that were brought up. And then suggestions, clear and more consistent policies, more staff training, greater resources, better communication, increased visibility, and safe spaces so that all students know they have safe spaces in our schools. This was the group that spoke about following religious traditions, and that the importance of respecting religious beliefs of all students was mentioned. There was a call for celebrating a wider range of religious holidays throughout the school year. I do think we've been making efforts to do that, and I know there's debate about how many and how often, but we have been working to address that, and that some parents felt the curriculum should be more inclusive of diverse religious figures. And then there was discussion about balancing religious beliefs. And at this session, there was some tension around how to navigate religious beliefs that differ on issues like LGBTQ plus identities. And there was some conversation and debate amongst those who were attending. But I felt like it was civil discourse. It wasn't, people yelling back and forth. It was a conversation. Some parents felt that celebrating LGBTQ plus identities conflicted with their religious beliefs. And then others argued that religious beliefs should not be used to justify discrimination against LGBTQ plus students. And then continued with this discussion of finding common ground. Desire to find common ground was talked about. One suggestion was made to hold a conversation about how flags, like the pride flag, are perceived by different groups. There was a focus on core subjects. One parent expressed a preference for a curriculum focused on core subjects like math, science, and less emphasis on SEL. And then some uncertainties, how to integrate religious holidays and celebrations into the school curriculum in a way that is respectful and inclusive of all students. We definitely have had some discussions this year about making sure we're not in sort of a cancel culture that's been discussed. This idea like, oh, we can't talk about celebrating Christmas, for example. No, we want to talk about celebrating Christmas and a lot of the other religious holidays and traditions that a lot of our other students are supporting. And then how to navigate situations where religious beliefs conflict with LGBTQ plus rights. Again, there was some, what I would say is civil discourse back and forth with discussions here on this topic. Okay, so those were the listening sessions, the 5 listening sessions. Now we move into the perceptions of equity data. This is a survey that's organized every other year, And Kara Davis has done a good job of putting this together with Dr. Amy Bull through K-12 Insight. And we continue to try to modify the survey if we feel that there are questions that are confusing. And there are some issues with the survey in that you're going to see that what happens is you have patterns developed, but there still is a pattern that a lot of times people don't know how to answer the question, and then therefore they answer it, I don't know. And that does create some, we wonder, is that because the way we're asking the question, or is it because we're not communicating it out well enough? Those are all things we wonder as we go through this data. So if you look at it, it's this survey given to students in grades 4 through 12. It's given every other year. And so we're looking at the one that was given this past year. And it's important to note that the data is used to inform the DEIAC and the school board. And then we talk about patterns that develop in the survey, specifically the areas we need to focus on. And we embed those into, like Kara's talked about, the MyKit plan, which is our continuous improvement process. And then again, Ryan's going to be really dialed into this too to help focus on, well, where are the areas we need the vast majority of focus on, and center his goals around those. Okay, so we do have, although we had a lot of people take the survey, it's less from previous years, and we wonder, is that survey fatigue? Is it timing? Is it communication? With that said, we still feel that, it's a significant, it's significantly significant, even though it's less participants than in previous years. I just highlighted the blue to show you that's how many people took the survey in those areas. 643 parents and guardians, 162 staff members, 719 secondary students, and 416 heritage students. So here were some trends. Saline area schools treat students of all backgrounds with equity. Secondary students supported, and these are agree or strongly agree responses. So 75%, 74%, staff said 83%. Those are increases from the previous survey, but the next question, there's some decreases in these numbers. Feeling comfortable and welcome in Saline area schools, 76 secondary students said agree, strongly agree, which is still a strong number. But it is down from the previous survey. Parents and guardians at 85% and staff said 90%. Treated fairly at school. And if there's not something to compare, then Ryan was saying it didn't happen in the previous survey, or it was worded differently. So treated fairly at school, elementary students, 91% by teachers, 86% by staff. Secondary students, 81% by teachers, and 83% by staff. Okay. Here's more about bullying, because we've talked about it a fair amount tonight. 38% of parents and guardians said their student has felt bullied, harassed, or excluded by other students in their school, and 37% of participating secondary students said the same thing. But this next bullet gets interesting in terms of whether people are perceiving that's happening to a different group or they're experiencing it themselves. So the next bullet point is very interesting. More participants said harassment or bullying has happened to others than experienced it personally. And so here's, for example, it says 32% of parents and guardians said harassment, bullying based on race or ethnicity has happened to other students, but only 7% of those students reported it happening to themselves. And so that is in conflict with, they're reporting about others versus reporting about themselves. But regardless, I think it's clear we do need to work on harassment and bullying. I mean, we're getting enough data that shows that this is an issue, not only for the Saline area schools, but in all schools. My conversations with superintendents are that behaviors have increased over the years, and so has some behaviors as it relates to bullying and harassment, and we need to continue to be, really putting extra emphasis on it, which I strongly believe we are. Okay, I don't think we need to go through all of these because I feel like it's just going to get long-winded, and I know that you all have this report. I've sent it to you, but basically we were looking at trend patterns. So this slide, when you look at it over, this is parents and guardians. These are the highest reported areas and the lowest reported areas. So with the lowest reporting areas, this is where Kara and our team will say, okay, even though you might say, well, that's not that low. Yeah, but there's a trend pattern that's the lowest of all our questions reported. So how are we going to address that? And that we would take that same approach with how staff members are reporting, how secondary students are reporting, and how elementary students are reporting, and be discussing that with our administrative team and Ryan to help develop more focus on our goals for this upcoming school year. I did want to touch on our middle school and high school GSA meetings. We met multiple times, and we had really good conversations with the students, which I think is important. A lot of times we're hearing from parents, but it's really important to hear from students like we did tonight. And we had a good opportunity to meet multiple times with our GSA at the middle school and Uproar at the high school. And there were lots of areas that they supported positive experiences that they're seeing and some areas of growth. And we feel strongly that we are taking action with those areas of growth. One area is Power School and how we're identifying students. And Kara and team are actively working to make those adjustments within Power School. Another suggestion was when they're substitute teachers, how do we help them know how students want to be called? Because sometimes when they just pull it out of Power School, it's not necessarily reflecting what students want to be identified as. And then there were some proposed ways in which we could address student concerns, including an important one, gender support plans for our students that are identifying as LGBTQ+, and how we better support students and make sure that our teachers and our administrators have a strong path forward with that. Our Black Student Union reported a number of positive experiences and areas of concern and some specific things we need to work on as a staff. So that's a lot, but I do want to entertain questions if people have any. And you're also welcome, obviously, you have the report that's presented tonight. You could always look it over further and ask me questions at another time too if you wanted to.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that offer. Are there any pressing questions at the table? No. Yep. One from Susan, one from Jenny.
I was just going to say, one of the tricky things sometimes about the reporting, like the highest and lowest ranking items, is that there are always going to be highest and lowest ranking items. I think we mentioned this before, but so some things that are identified as the highest or lowest ranking, I just want to reiterate for everyone that even if it's identified as a highest or lowest ranking item, it might still have a high percentage of achievement, because there will always be. They'll always categorize those items for us, which is great for making our continuous improvement plans, but it doesn't necessarily indicate a huge deficit if it's ranked as a lowest ranking item.
I think a key area, though, is the really important ones to look at are when they all align in the different groups. Like if you see elementary students say this, secondary students say this, parents say this, and the teachers say this, or the staff say this, you can say, oh, okay, we need to address some things. And then sometimes you find that they're really far apart. That's an issue too. I have a good one to bring up, and that is that we always have lessons that teachers, well, it's actually worded a little differently. It basically says, do the lessons that teachers teach you reflect real life experiences? Well, the students always rank that much lower than the teachers. So what does that say to us? We've kind of like Ryan Rowe was reporting tonight, we've got to demonstrate how our instruction is really supporting their real life experiences. Mm-hmm. So that's an example of how we could really dial in on some data there.
Well, agree. Looking for trends and also looking for shifts and trends from one survey to the next too. So, yeah.
So I have kind of stuff, 'cause these are like multiple presentations with kind of related items or topics. So just one thing, when the listening sessions were advertised, it was, I think you mentioned, but families of students who are Asian, Hispanic, Latino, Native American, or Pacific Islander. I think you had it identified as other racially diverse students. That wouldn't be a good, I would say, I mean, there's ethnicity and race represented there, but I wouldn't title that as a whole, just giving feedback.
Yeah, I think
as race.
that's good feedback. I believe we did go back and try to change that, but
Okay.
that was confusing.
Yeah,
Agreed.
I mean, yeah, it's hard, right, with numbers of attendees and like getting that feedback. So like listing or having, multiple identities coming to one session. And that brings up intersectionality. I think hopefully that's a word that everybody is aware of, but there's multiple people who have multiple identities that are marginalized. So someone who's queer with a disability. So sometimes you have multiple, like one person experiencing multiple layers of discrimination and their experiences. So let me think. So as far as like the trends on the data, I was looking at, I think it's hard with the comparison with that, for example, 32% of parents said that harassment and bullying based on race and ethnicity has happened to other students, but only 7% said that it happened to their student or to them, which is 1%. And so we're talking about race and ethnicity. So, giving our percentage of students who are, a race and ethnicity other than, white, and so I think that's hard to gauge, like, to say, I mean, how many parents are filling this out? If it's saying 7% of parents said it happened to their child, we're talking about parents with children of, a certain race and ethnicity, and then only 1%. So, yeah, I don't think that's a good comparison because we don't have a lot of, students who are, students of color here in the district. So we're not going to be able to have all of them fill it out either, right? So I think, yeah, that's kind of tricky there. And also the other one based on gender identity as well. I wanted to say, like, not all students who are with GSA, BSU, and Uproar who have those identities are going to those groups. And so I think, I'm glad that there has been admin be able to attend whenever the groups ask, and to be able to get that feedback and taking action on things that haven't happened, but also being able to not only talk to those students and tell them what's going on, but to make sure other students outside of that group know as well. So for example, I think somebody told me the Upward, there was like 4 students who regularly attended, right? So if they know that there's an update on something, other students who don't attend there, which may benefit by that information, may not have that information. So I guess more communication and in general. And then I think, let me see. Oh, and as far as I think the data, I had said this maybe a couple months ago when there was a session of the special education, and I had encouraged that we, give data to the staff about, questions about, or answers about the experiences of students with disabilities, or even perceived students who are perceiving, who is being harassed more, or I think I talked about inclusive curriculum, that wasn't something that was seen in that population. And so being able to share this data not only with the DEIAC or the board, that it is shared with groups as well who would benefit from this data across the district. So not just special education, but talking about like maybe the counselors or the building admin, that kind of thing, to make sure we share. And so my, I guess a question, the like listening sessions. So when, like, if I go back a couple of years, when these sessions have been, have happened and have been reported on, there's things that continue to be reported on that still needs to be addressed, right? So, 2 years ago, talking about, racism that's existing and needing admin response, kind of the same things trickle over and over again. So with that listening portion, what are you doing, I guess, beyond that, connecting with those people that gave you feedback, to say this is what we're doing, or I don't know, how are you moving forward from this specifically, like when you're doing the listening sessions? Or
Yeah, I mean, I'll sort of go back to what Trustee Gerbe was saying about bullying. We're always working on it. And even though we're likely to continue to get, responses that we need to work on racism or microaggressions, it is about what we try to do next. For example, the previous year, we didn't have such a strong Black student union at the high school. And I think we've tried to put some greater emphasis in creating that space. And I do think the report is that's paying off as a really good space for the students, our Black students. And so, we continue to try to respond to that. That was some feedback we had received previously. But yeah, we are going to continue to need to work on, our anti-discrimination policy, our harassment, all those things. Try to strengthen our hate speech policy. We've been talking about all those things to continue. Consistency. I think handbooks is a big thing that we've been working on to try to develop more consistent approaches on dealing with handbooks. I know that we're doing that right now. Our administrative team is working on revisions and talking about consistency, because there has been some discussion on how we're disciplining and that we need to develop more consistent practices there. So I do think there are those things that we keep continuing to work on, but it's likely that, if I'm giving the same report next year, a lot of those same things are still going to continue to need to be worked on. An area that I know that we're making some progress, at least with resources, is hiring practices. Carol Diglio has been working with a subset of the DEIAC to identify better ways to communicate out our postings to HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, and also Hispanic institutions. So that's an area that we're actively working on based on feedback about trying to diversify our staff.
I have one more thing. Thank you. So I got feedback, and I got to make sure I say it because it just came back to me. As far as the surveys, I'm sad that there was less people filling them out. But I think that that's part of, what action is being taken from that feedback, right? So I was told that there was a concern from students filling out the information. I think they're filling out the survey. I think part of that, they feel they're not being listened to anyways, right, when they report. I think there's also a fear if they fill out the survey that it's as if they're reporting the bullying, and there's concerns that they will be, approached when they don't necessarily want to report it. So coming from another parent, there are students whose child said, "Mom, we don't fill that out. Like, we have to enter our student information." And so I think communication on that, possibly making sure that it's we don't want students to take it multiple times, right? And we do it through K-12. I think communicating to the students and the parents that this is completely anonymous, and just stressing that hopefully we can get more feedback and survey response. So that's just feedback that came to me, and I thought it was a good thing to point out with the students' hesitations to fill it out.
Okay, I can
Thank
mention
you.
that.
That sounds helpful. Brad or Jenny? No? Tim? No? Well, thank you so much. That was a long presentation, but packed full of items. I'd like to hand it over to Secretary Miller, also Chair of the Policy Committee. And if you don't mind, I'm going to excuse myself for just a couple minutes. BRB.
Okay. The policy committee has been busy again. Feels like it's been a busy year. So we have a few items that we are bringing to you as a first reading. So they're in the packet. And I do want to just mention that there was one memo that was linked wrong in the email that I sent you ahead of time, but it was correct in the packet. So hopefully it was just a one sentence thing. But just in case it is correct in the packet, I accidentally linked the policy twice instead of the memo. Okay, so the first one that we're going to begin with tonight is policy 6350, titled Prevailing Wage Coordinator. So this is a first reading, and this is a new policy that the policy committee is bringing to you from Neola. This policy has been added because Michigan's Prevailing Wage Act has been restored and will take effect, or has taken effect, in March of 2024. So we need to have this position, and I believe, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we already have someone in position to take this role. Rex will be taking this role because it primarily impacts contracts. Yeah. So I'll introduce them one at a time and have discussion, if that's okay, if there's any discussion on that one. Any comments or discussion on policy 6350? So that one had the red and green and the memo. Or no, it didn't have red and green. It just had the recommended policy because we didn't have it before. A little bit of red.
It had a little bit.
They changed it,
Exactly.
but we didn't have it. So ours is it's all new for us. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. If anything comes up, we can come back to that. Moving to policy 8800, religious patriotic ceremonies and observances. This is a first reading for this policy also. And I'll read, for anyone listening, the memo. This policy is revised to reflect the recent U.S. Supreme Court decision in Kennedy versus Bremerton School District, in which the court clarified the equal importance of and interaction between the Constitution's two First Amendment classes pertaining to religious rights. The Bremerton decision reinforced employees' rights to free exercise of religion, such that a First Amendment analysis regarding district action, i.e. discipline or censorship, must consider whether the employee is exercising the staff member's free exercise rights. As a practical matter, the analysis remains unchanged. However, the court clarified that the school district officials were not entitled to err on the side of avoiding a violation of the Establishment Clause. Revisions are recommended, and if they're not adopted to articulate current law, the district can be exposed to a constitutional challenge to the policy as facially invalid. Likewise, application of new concepts does require officials to apply the law as described in the policy revision. So this is a revision to a current policy. However, because of the extensiveness of the revision, the policy committee felt like rather than putting it through on consent agenda, it would be best brought to the table for discussion. One note that I will make is that Steve did have a conversation, and I also had reached out to Rex, or actually Steve reached out to Rex on behalf of our committee, and one of the questions that we had is that the policy in its revision is pretty specific in the size of the flag, and so we wanted to know, first of all, we wanted to know from Melody, is there a reason why there is specifics or specificity on the size of the flag? And she was not aware of any reason that we would be legally out of compliance if we didn't have that certain size of flag in her research of the policy. Secondly, Rex stated that that the schools and classrooms have flags, and the secretaries and building principals are kind of order those as needed when a new flag is needed. And so he did not feel like it was a benefit to us to have included the specific size because the buildings kind of take that on by themselves. So if you look, it says, it's down in the second page, sorry. I'll get to that. It says, under patriotic activities and observances, the flag of the United States shall be raised above each public school building operated by the district at all times during school hours, weather permitting. That is happening. The flag shall measure at least 4 feet, 2 inches by 8 feet. The United States flag shall also be displayed in every classroom or instructional site in which students recite the Pledge of Allegiance. So Rex did confirm that the flags are flying over the schools during school hours or school events, weather permitting. He also confirmed that there are flags in learning spaces or instructional sites where students recite the Pledge of Allegiance, but he did mention that the flag measurements are not that exact at every building, so that would be something that he would recommend that we not include in the policy, just because one flag in one school might differ from another. For example, the flag that flies over Hornet Stadium might be a different size than the one that flies over Pleasant Ridge, and so we didn't have, based on the interpretation from Neola and based on checking with our buildings and ground crew, they did not feel that it was necessary to include that sentence in measurements. That came to us after the last policy meeting, so that is up for discussion here at our table tonight.
So I want to mention that the current policy has the 4 feet and 4 feet, 2 inches by 8 feet.
Yes.
I think this policy spells out.
Yes,
like
it does.
4
Yep. So the
and
change is
2.
there. Yeah. But it came, I'm sorry, I should have clarified. Yeah. So the change this time would be to change it from, right now it is just listed in numbers, and so changing it to words. However, in our discussion at the policy table, we discussed whether or not we are in support of continuing to leave that sentence, or if we would be in support of striking that. And we wanted to collect information from the two and got that information. So we can decide that here at the table. It doesn't need to go back to policy if we decide to revise that.
So I just, a couple things. So Neola wrote these changes then?
Neola wrote the red and green changes.
red
The
and green
only
changes.
change that we are proposing is, well, that we're not proposing. The only change that we were inquiring about was that one sentence.
Yeah.
The rest of the changes were changes from Neola in compliance with the case that was mentioned in the memo, which is the Bremerton case.
Yeah, okay. So
Yeah.
that was Neola that wrote these changes.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I guess I'm not sure on the 4 foot 2 inches and 8 feet,
Mhm.
but this says every classroom, so we have flags in every classroom then?
That was confirmed by Rex, and not just every classroom, but every learning space. So there are spaces that aren't necessarily like a classroom, but like a media center
that's-
or
So every
some other.
classroom? Because
Mhm.
I've
Mhm.
heard that there aren't in every classroom, but I've not gone to
If-
every classroom to confirm
So,
myself either.
so Rex said that they are made available in every classroom. So if you have observed one that is not currently visible in the classroom,
So we
then
need
you could
to-
inquire. Mhm.
I think, so the policy, also, like, just to that, says that it has displayed in a classroom or other instructional site in which the students recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yes.
So I guess an example would be, I don't know, art class, maybe there's that first period, there's never students there reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. It's not required by
Yes.
policy to
Yeah.
be
So
there.
if somebody inquired of the art teacher, I don't see a flag here in your classroom. The art teacher might say, "We don't have students during the Pledge of Allegiance," and that would be in compliance with the policy. But typically they are provided to be displayed in each classroom. Yes, Jennifer.
Thanks for the follow-up, because I know we discussed this. I'd be fine with leaving it. I think the essence of it is it's raised above each public school building, and so a building is a significant size, so the flag conversely should be a significant size as well, so it's displayed largely. I hear what you're saying about Hornet Stadium, because it's a little bit different. It's ceremonial during the athletic event. I think that one's bigger, but it's also not a public building, and it would be in compliance because it's even bigger than that. So I'm fine with leaving it. I think the essence of it is that it should be of a more substantial size than something you'd have in a classroom.
I think, and Steve could maybe speak more to this because Rex isn't here tonight, but I think the concern is, and it may seem small, but the concern is the maintenance and the constant need to check for compliance to make sure that the flags that are ordered and currently displayed meet that specific criteria, and if they are larger or smaller, then what? So I think that was the concern from Rex, is that having the specificity included may not be necessary. Yeah, she did. She said it could be removed. Yeah. Treasurer Gerby?
Yeah, I would say that like the words "at least" would cover a lot of the like piece where you're talking about we could have discrepancies between Hornet Stadium versus a building versus a. So I mean, I think it's semantics if we leave the language there. I do think that the flag should be large enough to, like you, as you intended, just to be able to say like with pride that and patriotism that this building is, in a public school in the United States of America, right? So now you said that we might not, we could have maintenance making this be an issue for them and having to measure them. Isn't this language already there? So any flag we've already bought should already be
So it
this
is.
big, right?
It is. So let me just backtrack to say it has been a part of the policy. The policy
Right.
committee specifically asked about the specificity and whether it needed to be included. So I'm just reporting back to say Melody said it does not need to be reported or does not need to be included. If we choose to omit it, it's not legally required. Second, that Rex said that because individual school buildings are in charge of the ordering and procuring of those items, he couldn't say with certainty that they all meet this specific measurement requirement, and that if we're asking him to then check for compliance regularly, that could be an additional thing on his plate, I think.
And I could totally appreciate that. I would imagine if we had a flag that was not of these, also that our community would, have questions about that and would bring that to our attention. So
We also asked.
I guess I don't
We
know
also
one way or
asked
the other.
Melody like if there was significance. She didn't know of any, but Lauren did find that there is some proportionality recommendations that are, just on a quick Google search. If the building or space is X size, then the flag should be Y size. So it was. There are some proportionality recommendations. I mean, I've personally worked in most of the schools or had children who attended most of the schools, and I find the flags to be proportionate to the size of the building. So it wasn't something that I'm concerned about. But if, because it is stated in policy, it should be something that is complied with. And so, I wouldn't want to, leave it there and then say, as long as it's close, I don't know. So.
I also wonder if there's kind of confusion about, because the next sentence kind of just comes in saying about the classrooms, if there's confusion about the size of that.
I think so too, because it doesn't specify the size of the flag in the classroom. It only is specifying the size of the flag outside of the school building, and so I think you're right that could be some confusion there too.
Isn't an American flag supposed to be the largest flag displayed?
I think when Lauren was looking for that, she found the proportionality requirements, but I don't remember if she found specifically whether or not. I mean, that makes sense to me, but I also I'm just off the top of my head thinking about like government buildings that fly like the Michigan flag also, and
They're
it seems to be smaller. Yeah.
And I'm just wondering because when you talk about, doesn't specify classroom size, but if we got other flags flying in classrooms, the American flag should be larger than the other flags.
That's not in policy though, is it?
Yeah, it's not in current policy.
But if that is, I will look to see if that is what is supposed to be.
Yeah, for sure. If you
the
find something
flag.
about that and would like to bring it to the second reading, that would be great. Yeah. That wasn't something that came up, so.
Jenny, the other thing that we talked a little bit about, because we were Googling it while we were there, because we were trying to, is this a federal law? Was the size of the flag is proportionate to the flagpole size?
Yes.
There has to be a correlation that an X size flag, like I just Googled it and it said, basically on a 4x6, you need to have a 20 to 25 foot flagpole. So it depends on the size of the flagpole as well.
Mm-hmm.
Who knew?
So the size was one piece that the committee had asked for us to consider. But as you can see, there were a number of changes, like whole paragraphs were changed, and this is a part of the packet for anyone who is wondering what specifically has been changed. But I didn't know if there was anything else that stood out to anyone on our team. Okay. All right. And Tim, if you do find that information and you want to share it, not for dialogue, but if you do have that information ahead of the next meeting, that could help facilitate the conversation at that meeting. We won't obviously discuss it other than here at the table, but it would be helpful to have it to consider. Okay, so then the last policy for first reading tonight is not a Neola policy. So you did not have red and green for this because this is a policy change that was brought to us from Steve and from members of the policy committee. So this is a change that changes, to the development of administrative guidelines And we are discussing it tonight, but I also wanted to note that Steve sent to everyone that if you do go to board docs, there's a drop-down menu now that does have the drafted administrative guidelines visible for all to see. So let me just say, okay, the following policy, so this is from our board operating procedures. So the following policy additions or revisions are being recommended for discussion items at an upcoming board meeting, which is in compliance with 0131.1, which states all policy changes first appear on the agenda as discussion item. If the full board is, if the full board discussion is complete, then, and these, sorry, I'm still a little jet lagged. I'm going to make this a little bigger. Okay, sorry. If the full board discussion is complete and there is a sense of consensus, then the policy appears on a future agenda as an action item for adopting at the next board meeting. Okay, so with that said, that's why this is being brought to you, not as what you've seen in the past as a Neola recommendation. Okay, so administrative guidelines, Saline revision. Superintendent Lodge has requested that a change be made to the paragraph that currently reads, a copy of the district's administrative guidelines manual and a copy of each handbook shall be made a part of the board's reference materials maintained in the district office. That's what it currently says. His recommendation is that it now will read, administrative guidelines will be posted online alongside the Board of Ed policy manual. A copy of each handbook is available on each of the school's websites. Secretary Miller also has suggested that a change be made to the paragraph that currently reads, as long as the provisions of these administrative guidelines and handbooks are not inconsistent with board policies or with federal state law, they will be considered to be an extension of the policy manual and binding upon all employees and students. So the change would now read, provisions of these administrative guidelines and student handbooks will be revised annually to be consistent with policies and with federal, state, and state laws. Students are bound by the handbooks that are updated and signed each year. So those were the changes that are recommended to policy 1230.01.
I have two clarifying questions. So on, I guess I had brought it up, I think, I don't know, my emails, I got removed from the list somehow, and I think I emailed separately you and Betty about, I didn't see a draft version yet. I know, like with the strikes out and then added in so we can kind of see.
So the platform no longer provides that service for our policies. Neola sends those to us, but Betty doesn't have, she would have to create that separately. And so that's why we created the memo to show where those changes would be. Because she used to have the ability to go in and create that and create the red and green.
Yeah,
and that has changed.
Yeah, and well, when I was doing it, we were working from, I was able to bring a draft. So visually, we'll have to do that ourselves then because Neola's not.
Neola doesn't, the last time we checked with Betty, that was not something that they provided on their platform for her to go in and make those revision and changes with red and green. So that's why we created the memo instead.
Well, I mean, we always have a memo, or supposed to, right? So we're just not doing a draft of it. That's how we're moving forward with.
We didn't do that. We didn't create a draft. We created this memo that has the paragraph as it was and as it will read now.
Can we ask for a draft, or? I mean, I would like to visually see what the policy, just as we've always done with the marking out and stuff.
So your proposal is for a change to the procedure to be that when things are presented to the full board, that there be a full draft, not just a memo.
Why is that a procedural change?
Well, it's not listed, so I went by what was listed and created the memo and thought that it was sufficient. I can work on that. It just creates more work on my end, but I can definitely work on that.
I could throw it together, honestly, but I just when we have a draft come, that's just what I would expect, to see.
Okay,
Um,
I can definitely make a note of
I
that.
mean, others can talk
No,
about
I
it,
can
just-
definitely make a note of that. That's one of the reasons that I sent this in at June 26th, so that we could get feedback. And I know you sent feedback just recently, but we can definitely create a draft. But I went back and looked at the board operating procedure and created the memo and went from there. So if the
Yeah,
board,
'cause-
if the full board would like to have a draft every time with the red and green, then we can work on creating a platform that provides that. But we will need to do that in conjunction with Betty so that we don't have the problem that we've had in the past with multiple copies of things floating.
Yeah, and I brought this up after I didn't see it in the packet, so that's why I emailed the other day versus 2 weeks ago, just wanting to have that in the packet. I had another question for you. I think it's gone. No, I did. Oh, so the clarifying I guess in the, and maybe this is why I thought like a draft was coming, because in the agenda, the first policy you talked about says first reading, the second one says first reading, and the third one says discussion, which
I'm
I
not
guess
sure.
both they mean
Yeah,
the
I'm not
sa-
sure.
the same
They're all
thing, but-
discussion. Yeah, I'm not sure why it was differently labeled that way.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I know in the past when we've had policy changes, Betty has had the ability to work in the system to create those changes. And I'm not sure why Neola isn't allowing that anymore. My hunch is that if people are allowed to go in and make those changes, that it could create confusion. I'm not sure. But that is something that she checked into, I know, within the last year or so, and that is not a service they provide any longer. But I can talk to her about how we can do that if that's something that the board would like, instead of just a memo when there's a change to a Saline change, not a
Like
Neola
proposed
change.
Change from us.
Mhm.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say I appreciate the rationale statement. Thank you. And coming up, I had a proposed set of changes, and it's going to be red and green everywhere to look like a seasonal celebration. That'll be great.
Well, yeah, I mean, the other piece too is this memo isn't automatically generated like the other memos are generated. So when you get a memo that's like this, it's one that I've generated from our discussion. So it's just when we create policy or revisions to policy that's not done through Neola, it just is an added layer.
So if I can ask, I'm not hearing any changes to the language that. I didn't doubt that. I'm just saying I didn't hear any changes to the language. Are you offering changes to the language? Okay, I'm just saying I'm not hearing any changes to the language. Does that mean we're getting close to this? There's more from you though, Susan. Okay.
Yeah, I was just asking, clarifying on the draft. I was wondering why, and it's actually not consistent with another policy on on administrative guidelines, which is 0132.2. The language where you've taken out employees, I believe that's your suggested language, that students are bound by handbooks that are updated and signed each year.
So at our last discussion, it was mentioned that there is no current employee handbook, so we didn't want to include employee handbook.
I guess because it says administrative guidelines and handbooks.
In the original?
No, in the current one too,
Okay,
but
sorry.
so, yeah, I know that that was a question for sure.
Okay, I'm sorry,
But
can
the-
you restate? I don't know, I'm confused. Can you go back and tell me which piece you're referencing and what the question is?
Yeah, I think it's, what you've, requested to change. So at the beginning, as long as these provisions of the administrative guidelines and handbooks are not inconsistent with board policies, federal, state law, they'll be considered an extension of the policy manual and binding upon all employees and students. So that would include handbooks, administrative guidelines, and handbooks. And so I guess that's confusing with the employee piece, but the employees are still bound by the administrative guidelines, which is actually in the current, or sorry, the policy that I mentioned. So if that was going to come out,
We'd need the other one to be consistent. So that's something
Yeah,
for us
which-
to consider here at the table. I will say that the language that is suggested is language that was drafted in a meeting with Melody. And that's where we landed with that, if that makes any difference to anyone. But I'm happy to entertain a motion to make a change to that, to be in compliance with the other policy, or a request for us to review the other policy, if that's what.
So
table would like.
I'm looking at both policies side by side right now. What changes, so the other policy isn't on the agenda, so I think that should be referred back to the committee. But just to clarify, Susan, what are you asking? That there's a sentence in this policy that you want replicated in the other policy?
no, the other policy says that employees and students are bound by the administrative guidelines, which that's the truth. And that's in both policies. If we're taking out under the current policy we're looking at, that's inconsistent with our current policy. So that is relevant to this policy and conversation. So that's specifically the piece that we're taking out employees. That's the change.
Okay, so the request is to put on an agenda of a policy meeting, policy 0132.2.
No. I'm suggesting that we keep the employees in there as being bound by the administrative guidelines.
Okay, so change language to the 1230.01.
Or can I go back to say, or a revision of that? Sorry, I had another tab open. Okay, so where it says provisions of these guidelines and student handbooks will be revised annually to be consistent with policies and with federal and state law, should it, somewhere in there, it should say that employees are bound by the administrative guidelines. That's what you're requesting. But it also,
Initially.
yeah, but then the second sentence says, so I can see, okay, let me just say, provisions of these administrative guidelines and student handbooks will be revised annually to be consistent with policies and with federal and state law, period. So the sentence that is up for question is that it then says students are bound by the handbooks that are updated and signed each year. So there is no employee handbook, as was discussed when Carol was here at our last meeting. So there is no currently there are no employee handbooks for employees to be bound by, but there are student handbooks. So that sentence was revised to have students are bound by handbooks that are updated and signed each year. The staff does not sign those handbooks, so that's why there was the omission there. And so perhaps an additional sentence should state that staff are bound by the administrative guidelines. Is that?
Yeah, I see what you're trying to do.
I would say you could probably say something like, staff and students are bound by administrative guidelines. Students are also bound by the handbooks and updated and signed each year, or something like that. So it'd be like two parts to it.
So I just to clarify, so the first sentence is not binding anyone to anything. It's just stating that the handbooks and administrative guidelines are revised annually. So it's the second piece that is the compelling piece in terms of like how staff and students are bound.
Could it be, so employees and students are bound by these administrative guidelines, and then students, because we already said updated too.
So the administrative guidelines are not for students, though. Those are for the implementation of policy. And so I can see where the staff would be bound by those, but then those guide the handbooks, and those are what the students are bound by. So the students aren't necessarily bound by the implementation or sorry,
Operationalize.
operationalizing of the policy per se, but they are bound by the handbooks that are created or generated from those pieces. So I think there's two different things, and I think saying that students are bound by the administrative guidelines could be a little bit, you know what I mean? So I almost feel like there should be a second sentence there that if we feel like we need to state specifically that staff are bound by the by the administrative guidelines, and that then secondly, students are bound by the handbooks.
Jenny, just
Yeah.
to point out, in the other
Mhm.
policy, it reads, such administrative guidelines
Yeah.
shall be binding on the employees and the students of this district when
Mhm.
issued. That they are bound by the administrative guidelines.
Yeah, that's from, would be consistent with
Yeah.
the one I referenced, 0132.2.
Yeah, I
That's
have it up
that
too.
one, yeah.
No, I have it up too. The only, and I'm just gonna go back to our previous discussion. The reason why employee was removed is because there was a question asked to Carol about employee handbooks, and there is no employee handbook, so it was removed.
So, okay. Yeah, or just, I'm not sure, it's like, I like the idea of such administrative guidelines shall be binding on the employees and the students of the district when issued. Instead, I feel like that sentence could just be swapped in
So
for that last.
take out that last sentence and put
That's
in
what
the new
I think,
sentence.
and then
Okay.
also, to be honest with you, like, I know that we probably have I know we have a process in place for students to like sign for, books every year, but I mean, that could end up becoming an arduous task if you think about like, now do I have to find every student who hasn't signed, this handbook, and now like, are we having principals and assistant principals spending good portions of their time instead of enforcing them, just taking this language and having to
Yeah,
check
definitely.
a box?
That's and that's a question Steve can answer. I know in the past, at least from my own experience in the district and with my own students, that one piece, at least of the handbook, was the tech usage, and there was no tech usage allowed until that was signed. So, yeah, the AUP. Yep.
And handbooks are, so I'll give an example. When trying to register my children, the handbook that I was looking at, and I'm supposed to sign as a parent or acknowledge that I read it, actually was from like last year, because it was kind of, pending and being updated. So I think that's a question of, I don't know when students are supposed to sign it, but,
Okay, I don't want to open up that can of worms necessarily. I just like the idea of swapping the two sentences, but I also just gave a caveat as to why I also like it, right? But I just think it's more clear, right? If we just make it say administrative guidelines shall be binding on the employees and the students of this district when issued, period. That would be like what I would change the last sentence to, but we could talk through.
Okay. Is there consensus around that change? I just opened up the original document so that I could make that change, the memo document.
so that would,
So it
what
would now,
Jennifer read initially would become the second sentence of where it says students are bound by. We take that out and then put such administrative guidelines shall be binding on.
yeah,
Okay.
so let me just read what it says. So provisions of these administrative guidelines and student handbooks will be revised annually to be consistent with policies and with federal and state law. Such administrative guidelines will be binding on the employee and the students of this district when issued. Do we have consensus around that? Okay. I will make that change on the memo for Betty. Any other discussion to the change in language? And then also, if you haven't had the opportunity, I know Steve alerted everyone that the administrative guidelines had been added, but if you haven't had a chance to look at those. Yeah, so if you go to board docs, I'll just explain how to find it. for anyone else who might be listening too. So when you go to board docs, hold on, I gotta get to it. Okay, so when you go to Saline Area Schools board docs, in the right-hand corner, it says policies. And when you click on policies, if you go over to the left, there's now a drop-down manual that says policy, or drop-down menu that says policy manual. And then if you click on that, it says administrative guidelines manual. And you can find, and these are in draft. These are the ones that Steve's been working on that he said would be ready for fall.
These are the ones that are already ready.
They're ready, yeah, okay.
Few that we're still
A few more, okay,
adding them as we're getting feedback from other administrators.
okay.
If I could also note that if you do a search on any particular topic, you'll see all sorts of policies. They'll start with POs and AGs for administrative guidelines. I think some districts even have FOs, don't they, forms
Yeah, that's
coming up.
a question. I don't know if there's policy on that, or if that's something that needs to be in as far as the forms.
Okay.
So I before we land this, and I think we're getting there, I just want to make sure that I state one more time, and I'm probably going to say it again the next time that we meet, about the idea of these published administrative guidelines for me do not infer any type of distrust or any kind of, right, like our administrative team is outstanding. I believe they do everything with the best of intentions. And I love the clarity of this, okay? And I love the transparency, and I applaud Steve and the administrative team for doing so. But at the same time, I also want to make sure that we maintain a collaborative environment, and that we say that, you know what, like, yes, like our administrators and our leaders and our staff and our students aspire to this level of guidelines, this level of, but at the times we may also have to have discussions about things, and we will learn and we will continue to improve and all of those kinds of things. And so I just wanted to make sure that I state out loud that, like, I really do believe in the best intentions of our administrators and of our leadership. And these administrative guidelines are there for our public so that they can be, you know, informed of what our administrative teams aspire to do. So I just want to make sure I say that out loud.
I think they're informed of what policies they have to enact too. So I think that's good explanation of how to interpret the policy as well, because they still have to follow it.
Okay, so I just made a note of that change for Betty, and then I'll talk to her before our next meeting to see if there's a platform or a way for us to create proposed policy changes from our end that wouldn't create the Google Drive mess that we had a couple of months ago, with multiple copies of the same policy floating around.
And I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you for your service in this particular endeavor.
Well, to the whole committee.
And to,
To
yeah,
the
that's
whole
what
committee,
I'm
yeah.
trying to generalize that to the whole committee. Thank you so much to the whole committee. Give me a moment just to return to my own agenda. I'm going with the electronic version tonight. Administrative board updates. As usual, we start with Dr. Lotch and open it up to the table for brief comments.
I've got two important ones. So, I've been talking at meetings about how we're ranked the #1 athletic school or district in Michigan, and I've talked about how a lot of that has to do with opportunity and balance with academics. And I just got this from Coach Alzire that their team, baseball team for the second year in a row, had a top 5 GPA for all teams in the state of Michigan in Division I. And there's a lot of teams. So this is baseball. And I just want to point out that we could take a lot of our teams and find that same thing. So I just want to point out that importance of balance with athletics and academics. A couple other things. We're staring at the, we're getting ready to report our annual report that Jackie's working on. And one of the bar graphs will show that, we're looking at our largest fund balance in 10 years. And I think that's a tribute to excellent financial leadership from Miranda, our finance committee, and that it's just an impressive statistic. in addition, we just got our AP scores for the high school, and we have over a 93% pass rate. That's the highest in 5 years, and will likely be the highest in Michigan.
Do you have a breakdown somewhere that we can look at later of the calculus scores, for example, AP calculus and AP?
Yeah, we do put that on the website.
Oh, it's on the website, great.
It's not up yet, but yes, there's an updated.
Excellent, thank you. Work our way down the table. Tim Austin?
I'm passing too, so you can just.
Susan, Jenny, and Brad. Yep. We're just making,
I'm going to try to be really quick because I want to make it known to the public, and I've sent out some information to the board team, just information regarding budget stuff. So the budget was passed for the 24-25 school year, and I guess what I would tell the public and what I would tell everyone here is that this budget is very different in the regard of how they decided to do the increases, if you will. So there is no per pupil increase baked into this year's budget. However, while that may sound like doom and gloom, there is a UAAL reduction from 20.96% to 15.21%. And so what I would say, like, I guess, because we're going to be this is 10 days old. So what I will tell you that as a finance committee, and mostly, let's be honest, Miranda and her team, is now it's going to be able to look at, okay, how does that impact the budget we passed, right, for this upcoming year, and how now do we adjust from, we kind of baked in a per pupil change, and how does that impact now this percentage change? What I will tell you from just my 10,000 foot above finance chair perspective, I think the budget still ends up being okay for us as a school district for this year. And I'm looking in Miranda's direction to kind of get her to give me at least a level of thumbs up or but what I'm saying is we will have to watch a little bit with our budget, because will this change from 20.96 to 15.21% be a continuous thing? Because they just wrote it and baked it in for 1 year. So that's the kind of to be determined in the stay tuned part that we just have to keep an eye on for 24-25 as a finance team, as a committee, and as a school district. So that's my report, and thank you. Hope everybody's enjoying their summer.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. July, as far as the awareness months, is Disability Pride Month. So I wanted to mention that. And, oh gosh, let me see. Lost my notes. The Saline Varsity Blues is holding their Back to the 80s show, which seems super excited. I know the flyer has the vehicle from, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting the name, Back to the Future. I'm excited to check that out. That's July, Thursday the 18th through July 20th on a Saturday. So, even though school has ended and we're in the summer, go ahead and check that out. So I think that's it right now.
I want to wish the Saline Trap team I want to wish them good luck this week. They are headed to Nationals, which will take place on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I think, in Mason, Michigan. And they had an outstanding showing at state and had several qualifiers. And I just want to wish them all the best of luck this week at Nationals. So can't wait to hear how they do and about their success. I do believe they are defending a national title, right? So Or state title? They have the state title. I don't know. Anyways. Okay. State back to back. Okay, for sure. So anyway, I just wanted to note that that is happening this week, and we have a number of kids who are participating in that, and wish them well.
Super. Well, thank you to everybody on the board for concise reports this evening. I would like to thank all of the board members who attended the training up at the WISD. I know those who sadly couldn't make it are going to scurry to try and make up a few other places. I know Milan is going to host one, and the WISD board is also going to host one. And Saline was in the group. I don't know if you knew this, Jenny Miller. Saline was in the group that went right to 9 o'clock, whereas the other group left at 7:22, which is, so I'm still holding on tightly to that. I'm a little bitter. No, it was
Well,
not.
hopefully my makeup session. I was at Laney's college orientation, so hopefully my makeup session will follow
I'm sure. I'd like to.
protocol that the others follow.
Tim talked the whole time. I'd like to move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda listed in this agenda won't be read aloud by me. The motion noted will allow for the authorization of all items listed without discussion unless a member of the board requested anything be handled individually. I'd like to entertain a motion to authorize the consent agenda, as printed.
So moves, Debin.
JS. Oh.
So I was interested in pulling two things just for questions.
Okay. We don't do this very often. We have to sort of train ourselves to do this in advance, but go right ahead. Go right ahead. Which two did you want to pull out for quick questions?
It would be a question to Miranda.
Or-
So we're approving tonight, like, almost, well, $4 million item and almost for another $4 million item in F and H. And so I just really just I guess an explanation of that. So if somebody looks at the agenda and is like, holy moly, we're doing this on consent, that's
Yeah, so hang on, Miranda, just as a part of procedure.
An individual member of the board may ask that an item be withdrawn, and this was for clarifying questions. So we're not making any substantive changes to any of this. So I am in concurrence with this slight modification. So Miranda, if you'd like to share with us. Thank you.
So in letter F, this is the general fund, and it's everything that we've done between every board meeting from one to the next. So it includes everything payroll, when we pay our ORS, when we pay all our payroll taxes to the IRS, includes just everything that we do in business. So that number really isn't all that big in comparison to most of the months. Bond payments are collectively a lot higher at this point in the year. We do a lot of our bond work is happening in the summer, as you can see visually throughout our school. So we're getting the active work kind of done. All of the things pretty much in bond have already been brought to you guys as we do approval for proposals. There's a lot of POs that were happening throughout the whole year, and this is where we're seeing them all come a lot to fruition. Sometimes a PO will, for bond specifically, will even capture 2 summers worth of things. So in general, it's a collection of multiple payments to multiple people that kind of are in our check registers.
all right. Thank you. Great. I think
No
that
problem.
definitely helps
Yes.
for the public and the board to understand.
Yep.
So I appreciate
If you think
that.
about it, $180 million being spent over 8 years, it's not actually that large in the
Yeah.
concept of all the things we've been approving and kind of working towards. So this is actually smaller and will continue to grow a lot more.
Okay, cool. Thank
There's
you.
a lot of pre-work in our bond happening, and now you'll see it flow for a lot of time.
Awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate that your responses were clarifying. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
We need a second on the.
Oh, we did. I thought it was Brad.
Did you do it?
Griswold
Okay.
over there. Okay, so all in favor, please say aye.
I.
Opposed? Right, there we go, 6-0. Items scheduled on the next agenda. What are the big ones, Dr. Lotch?
We're actually going to be developing them. We're still getting them ready for August.
All right,
So we'll have them.
excellent.
report out later.
public comment. This is your chance, Darcy Berwick. All right. The next meeting of the Board of Education will be held on August 13th, 2024 at 6:30. I'd like to entertain a motion to enter closed session. I'm going to need my glasses for this. At 9:30 with the intent to reopen at approximately, I think I said 10 minutes, 15? Depends on
Can
how
we
many
take a
questions.
break first?
Well, I'll tell you what.
Put a 5-minute break.
We're
at least.
going, there's no note here as when we're actually entering, or we enter closed session at 9:40. How's that? At 9:40, and with the intent to reopen at around 10 p.m.-ish. Thank you. Do I have a motion, please?
Motion Miller.
Thank you.
Support ESTEP.
Thank you so much. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you so much. And we'll see you, everybody back here in 10 minutes. There will be no action taken upon our return, so if you're hanging by your computer screens, please don't worry. Thank you. Tell me that we're not live. I would like to, and it's not up for anyone. I'd like to, with that, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn the regular Board of Education meeting of July 9th, 2024 at 10:08.
So moved, Stebbins.
JS. Tim, did you? Let's do a voice call vote. No, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Right. Opposed, nay. Right. Okay. Thank you very much, and we'll see you guys on somewhere in August. August. No, August 13th. Just a heads up, I'm going to be sending you an invite on August 14th